The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Balmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Present.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Velazquez. I'm sorry, Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. 10 present, you have quorum.
A quorum being present will be led first in opening reflection by Opal Jones, President and Chief Executive Officer of Doorways.
Thank you. And I do love a woman with a gavel, I must say. Good morning, esteemed Board of Aldermen. December is HIV/AIDS Awareness Month, a time to raise awareness and reflect on the impact this epidemic has had on our community and on the world. The United States has made enormous strides in HIV treatment, care, and prevention since the epidemic began more than 40 years ago. Today, we pause to remember the estimated 39 million individuals around the globe with HIV, including approximately 1.2 million here in the United States and the more than 6,000 right here in St. Louis. We also remember the 42 million individuals worldwide who have died from HIV. Their stories and their lives will continue to motivate and inform our work at Doorways to the end of this epidemic. Now, Reverend Jeff Moore.
Today, we also celebrate the medical advancement that prevent and treat HIV, which previous generations could only dream about, and we rejoice and reflect upon important programs like Doorways that improve the quality of life of people affected by HIV, illness, and poverty, advancing their stability and well-being through housing, health, and empowerment services. We remain grateful for how far we have come, but vigilant about the challenges ahead, and steadfast in our purpose to support our siblings that need us most. Thank you.
And at this time, I would like to invite up Bishop Nelson Watts Jr. to lead us in an opening prayer.
Thank you. We bow our heads. Father God, we thank you today. We thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your blessing. We thank you for who you are to us in our lives. We thank you for the scripture that says, I urge, then first of all, that petitions, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings and all those in authority, that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. So we pray, God, today for this Board of Aldermen. We pray for every decision that is made. We pray for every bill that is passed. We pray for our communities. We pray for our schools. We pray for our churches. We pray for those, oh God, even during this season of giving. And as we remember the birth of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, we pray, oh God, that those that are on the streets that are homeless, who have nowhere to stay, who have no food, God, that you would touch us, oh God, that are fortunate, and that we will reach out to those, oh God, the poor, the maimed, and the lame. We thank you for this day. We thank you for this time. be in every decision that is made and everything we've done. Continue to touch this United States of America. Continue to be in our transition of a peaceful transfer of power. We thank you for who you are in our lives, and we'll give you all the glory and praise in Jesus' name. And we say, amen.
Amen.
With that, we will dispense with the regular order of business to take up the courtesy resolution calendar. Alderwoman from the 10th, if you would like to approach the dais for Resolution 112.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam President, members of the board. I'm cheesing as I came up here because I tried to make this a surprise, but I guess we couldn't do that. Bishop Nelson Watts, who we are honoring today, I had the divine connection with first through our former colleague, the mayor of the North Side, right? And then after that, just stay connected to him through so many different ways, notably through the love and the care and the welcoming spirit that they have through his beloved First Lady, his wife, and then I would definitely be remiss if I didn't mention his mother, Mother Watts, who has stood in the gap for me since the loss of my mother. And so they're just stuck with me at this point. But we're not doing this today just because we love them and want to honor them. We're doing this on the receipts of 20 years of pastoral care in the city of St. Louis. And so my connection is real, but I also want to mention that all of us here have a connection to Bishop Watts as well, because this is our very own Clerk Rogers family church as well. So her sister is here, and we want to honor that as well, because every time I'm in that sanctuary, I make sure that her church family knows how valuable she is to us down here. And when you're in the ministry and when you're in the faith, you know that that is a reflection of the church and the leadership in the church. So Bishop Watts, she is a reflection of you, which reflects on all of us down here, and we thank you for that. So I didn't know if we wanted to read the resolution, Clerk Rogers, and then we would love for you to have some additional words. Again, I wanted it to be a surprise. First Lady, I wanted it to be a surprise, but I know he found out.
He did not.
Okay. Go ahead, see.
Resolution 212, honoring Bishop Nelson Watts Jr. Whereas Bishop Nelson Watts Jr. has served in ministry for over 36 years and 20 years of pastoral ministry and has reached 44 years of salvation. Whereas Bishop Watts was born and raised at Shiloh Temple Church of God in Christ under the leadership of Bishop W. Wesley Sanders. He received Christ at an early age of 8 and began preaching at the age of 16 at Williams Temple Church of God in Christ under the leadership of Bishop Lawrence M. Woolton. He was ordained as the youngest elder to be ordained in the Eastern Missouri, Western Illinois. Whereas on November 12, 2017, he was consecrated to the sacred office of bishop with the episcopal destination of auxiliary by the presiding bishop of the Church of God in Christ, Bishop Charles E. Blake. Whereas Bishop is the youngest of 6 children born to the late administrative assistant Nelson Watts Sr. and mother Rosetta Watts. Whereas Bishop graduated from Berkeley High School in the top 15% of his class while attending Florissant Valley Community College. After graduating from high school, he continued his studies at Florissant Valley Community College, where he pursued a major in secondary education and a minor in counseling. Whereas Bishop has held various roles in the Church of God in Christ. He served as Youth YPWW President and AIM Chairman for Eastern Missouri, Western Illinois. Presiding Bishop J. Drew Sheard and Bishop Linwood Dillard honored him nationally for his loyalty and dedication to church and service as AIM President. Bishop has served on numerous committees and is currently one of the Assistant General Secretaries in the area of Episcopal Relations. He is the member of the National Standard Extension Committee of the General Assembly of the Church of God in Christ. Whereas Bishop Watts is the pastor of El Bethel Temple Church of God in Christ in St. Louis, Missouri, and he's the pastor of Pillar of the Truth, Church of God in Christ in Peoria, Illinois. He serves as the superintendent of the Nelson Watts Senior District. He's the founder of the Last Days Deliverance Outreach Ministry. Bishop has been honored by both the Senate and the House representative for his outstanding service. Bishop Watts is the founder of the Prayer for Peace program and the founder and CEO of the Adopt a Family program. Whereas Bishop and the El Bethel Church of God in Christ members are the founders and hosts of the Anointed Prayer Line Ministry. The ministry consists of daily prayer sessions from Monday to Friday, 4:45 a.m. and 11:45 a.m. The ministry has prayer warriors from nearly 27 states representing different Christ-centered denominations from across the country. Whereas Bishop is happily married to the beautiful and supportive Lady Greta Vine Watts. They have 3 sons, Nelson III, Elder Sam Lawrence Watts, and Timothy Watts. Bishop is an anointed prayer warrior, prophet, teacher, pastor, and leader who dedicates his life to spreading the word of God. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis that we pause in our deliberation to celebrate, honor, and reflect the inspiring life of Bishop Nelson Watts Jr. and congratulate him on the 20th pastoral anniversary. We further direct the clerk of the Board of Aldermen to spread a copy of this resolution across the minutes of the proceedings and prepare a commemorative copy to the end that it may be presented at a time and place deemed appropriate by the sponsor. Introduced this 13th day of December 2024 by the Honorable Shamim Clark Hubbard, Alderwoman of the 10th.
All right, so in my humble nervousness, I failed to mention when I just called him the mayor of the North Side. And I know some of my colleagues weren't down here when he hailed, but he was known as the mayor of the North Side, the governor of the North Side. That was Alderman, former Fourth Ward Alderman Sam Moore, who many of you see the bricks on our desk. We got those from Sam Moore because one of his things that he always said is we can fix this brick by brick. And so again, I don't take that connection that he made with you, me and you, Bishop Watts, for granted, not for a second. And that's why anytime you, Lady Greta, of course, your beloved mother, anytime any of you call Bishop Wooten, Lady Wooten, anytime any of you call, I feel like it's my calling and his responsibility that he left on me to answer the call. So thank you all for your continued service, and we want to see if you want to have any additional words.
Thank you so much. Thank you for pausing. Thank you, Alderwoman Hubbard. Thank you. This one y'all got on me. I am surprised, and I appreciate it. Thank you for being able to serve our city and our community, and I appreciate you. I'm lost for words today. Thank you so much.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Somebody like to make a motion to make this in bank? Alderman from the 14th.
To make a motion that we embank this resolution.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we embank Resolution 212. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So we have now embanked that, which means that every member of the Board of Aldermen has signed on as a co-sponsor in support. So we all very much want to thank you for your service, for all of your work in the community, for always showing up, and know that the Board of Aldermen sees you, appreciates you, and I'm so glad that we could keep this a surprise today. So. And with that, if folks would like to get a picture, we can all get on the steps over here and get a picture.
Thank you, President. Thank you.
That Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on the motion to adopt the courtesy resolution consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we adopt the courtesy resolutions consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt the courtesy resolution consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderwoman from the 11th.
Morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. My honored guest today, and before we do that, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence on behalf of our loss of a great writer in the history of our country, Nikki Giovanni.
We could please bow our heads for a moment of silence.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. So, my honored guests are as follows, and I have a number of them, and I'll try not to forget any so that I won't have to come to the mic again. So I'd like to congratulate Attorney Gerald Christmas's daughter, who graduated from North Carolina Tech recently. Additionally, our own Lakeisha Bosley graduated this past weekend from Harris Stowe with a degree in political science and a minor in pre-law. So we're waiting to find out what law school she'll be going to. Additionally, I would like to congratulate all of those honorees of this year's Deluxe 100. Our very own Jay Nelson, Farrakhan Shagag, Monica Patton, Bill Darris, Pastor Anthony Riley, and again, Representative Lakeisha Bosley. And I think that is probably all that I have this morning for my honored guests. Thank you.
Alderman from the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Continuing on that train of graduations, I would like to have as my honor guest a good friend of mine, Umi Kanisi, who graduated from a Congressional Fellowship Program, USGLC. I know she is really excited about that. It's been a tough program. They've traveled to D.C., worked with congressional legislators to bring ideas back to their local municipalities. So proud of you, Umi. Good job. And also, I would like to have the firefighters from Local 73, about 40 of them graduated yesterday? 46 of them graduated yesterday. So we know our firefighters, just like a lot of our first respondents, they work very hard. They have to work when it's hot, cold, and they save many lives. And we just want to thank Local 73 for all the hard work that they've done. If you have an opportunity, several of us alders were able to get a special gift from Local 73. And we just want to say thank you for all the hard work that they do. And congratulations to all the 46 firefighters that graduated that will continue to save lives throughout the city of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to introduce as my honored guest this morning, Chip Smith. He is the co-owner of Intertwine Wine Bar. It's a new business in the Dutchtown neighborhood on the 47th block of Virginia, 4710 Virginia to be exact. He and his wife have worked really hard to make this business flourish in the Dutchtown community. And if you haven't been, they're actually doing a really wonderful holiday pop-up right now. It's been one of the top holiday pop-up in the city. So please feel free to frequent them and enjoy Dutchtown. And thank you, Chip, for being here.
Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I'm going to echo the sentiments of some of my colleagues already, but absolutely want to make sure that I also say congratulations to Umi of the 14th Ward for her graduation. And also some of my honored guests are in the gallery today. I see some 7th Ward constituents. We have both Sarah and Stan. So thank you all for being here today and seeing us live in action.
Any further introduction of honored guests? Any further introduction of honored guests? Seeing none, Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the approval of the minutes from Friday, December 6, 2024.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we approve the minutes from Friday, December 6, 2024.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we approve the minutes from Friday, December 6, 2024. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in A, B, and C and D of the agenda and has been placed in the Google Drive for your review.
We can dispense with line items 8 through 11. Alderwoman from the 8th, you are recognized on the motion to suspend the rules for the purposes of introducing Board Bill 154 for first reading.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we suspend the rules for the purposes of introducing Board Bill
154.
Thank you, 154.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 8th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th, that we suspend the rules for the purpose of introducing Board Bill 154. This is a non-debatable motion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan. Alderman Balmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
Alderman Browning.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Sanye. 14 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderwoman from the 8th. If you could please place Board Bill 154 at the end of the first reading of board bills.
So noted.
Alderman from the 4th, you are recognized in the motion to suspend the rules for the purposes of introducing Board Bill 155 for.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we suspend the rules to put Board Bill number 155 on the first read calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 4th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we suspend the rules to introduce Board Bill 155. This is a non-debatable motion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan. Alderman Balmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. 14 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion for the Alderman from the 4th. If you could please place Board Bill 155 at the end of the first reading of board.
So noted.
First reading of board bills.
Board Bill 142, sponsored by Alderman Cone, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, Board of Public Service, and Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports, the President of the Board of Public Service, and the Comptroller of the City of St. Louis to enter into and execute on behalf of the city the amended and restated memorandum of agreement between Southwest Airlines Company and the City of St. Louis, Missouri, which is attached hereto as Attachment 1 and made a part hereof. Board Bill 143, the number was not used this session. Board Bill 144, introduced by Alderwoman Keys, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller of the City of St. Louis to enter into and execute an agreement or agreements with the Missouri Department of Transportation for the receipt of MoDOT Highway Safety Grant funding, appropriating the sum of $80,000 containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 145, sponsored by Alderman Aldridge, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a lease agreement between the City of St. Louis, Missouri, and SCF Fleeting LLC for 1,600 linear feet of mooring in the near North Riverfront for the purpose of barge fleeting and under certain terms and conditions for a period of 10 years with 3 mutual options to extend for 5 additional years as set forth in lease agreement attached hereto as Exhibit A containing a severability clause. Board Bill 146, sponsored by Alderman Aldridge, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a lease agreement between the City of St. Louis, Missouri, and the Continental Cement Company, LLC, for approximately 20,225 square feet of land and 595 linear feet of mooring in the near North Riverfront for the purpose of barge fleeting and transloading cement products under certain terms and conditions for a period of 10 years with mutual options to extend for additional years as set forth in the lease agreement attached hereto as Exhibit A containing a severability clause. Board Bill 147, sponsored by Alderwoman Schweitzer, amending ordinance number 71902 to strike out the name Virginia Avenue and in lieu thereof replace it with the street name Vermont Avenue. Board Bill 148, sponsored by Alderwoman Schweitzer, an ordinance establishing various stop sites at the intersection of Bowen Street and Livingston Drive in the First Ward, regulating all traffic on the streets meeting at such intersection containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 149, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, an ordinance establishing a two-way stop site at the intersection of Hodemont Avenue and Hodemont Tracks, regulating all traffic traveling north and southbound on Hodemont Avenue at the intersection of Hodemont Avenue and Hodemont Tracks, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 150, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, an ordinance approving the dissolution of the Cherokee Limp Special Business District by repealing ordinance number 63957. Board Bill 151, sponsored by Alderwoman Schweitzer, pursuant to ordinance number 70333, as amended by ordinance number 71394, an ordinance directing the Director of Streets to install speed humps to calm the flow of traffic on the 38 and 3900 blocks of Bowen Street in the First Ward. Board Bill 152, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, an ordinance approving a petition to amend the petition to establish the Soulard Community Improvement District to add certain real property to the Soulard Community Improvement District, adding a certain real property to the Soulard CID, finding public purpose for additional of certain real property to the Soulard Community Improvement District, authorizing certain other actions, and containing an emergency clause and a severability clause. Board Bill 153, sponsored by Alderwoman Sanier and President Green. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment and establishing the Transform St. Louis Act, authorizing and directing an appropriation in the total of $277,240,061.56 of the RAM settlement funds for deposit into various new special funds to support citywide infrastructure, affordable child care, post-secondary educational and training opportunities, city and community workforce development efforts with amounts as described herein, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause.
If you can't get a quorum.
Board Bill 154, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, an ordinance pertaining to commercial semi-trailer trucks, also known as semis or tractor trailers, prohibiting such traffic along certain portions of Laclede's Landing neighborhood, exempting from said prohibition emergency vehicles, including privately owned tow trucks, providing emergency service to non-commercial vehicles, vehicles making deliveries to nearby addresses, and vehicles with gross vehicle weight of less than 26,000 pounds, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 155, sponsored by Alderman Narayan, an ordinance to provide minimum standards to make available a more highly trained, diverse construction workforce and increase the number of ability diverse high road construction employers to perform infrastructure, commercial, residential, and industrial contract services to and for in the City of St. Louis for generations to come in a manner that is both economically efficient and beneficial to the City of St. Louis, its business, community, and residential communities to support successful, diverse, and thriving families and individuals. That's the extent of first reading of board bills.
If you could please send Board Bill 154 to Public Utilities and 155 to Transportation and Commerce.
So noted.
Reference to Committee of Board Bills.
To the Transportation and Commerce Committee, Board Bill 142 and 155. To the Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee, Board Bill 144, 147, 148, 149, 151, and 154. To the HUD Committee, Board Bill 145, 146, 150, 152, and 153. That's the extent of reference to Committee of Board Bills.
Second reading report of standing committees.
The following board bill was reported out of Transportation and Commerce with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 128 as amended, sponsored by Alderman Ryan, Alderman Cone, and Alderman Browning. An ordinance amending Chapter 3.99 of the Revised Code of the City of St. Louis to clarify the applicable of living wage requirements. The following board bill were reported out of HUS with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 139, sponsored by Alderman Browning, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing the City of St. Louis, Missouri to issue its taxable industrial development revenue bonds in the principal amount of not to exceed $36 million for the purpose of providing funds to pay the cost of construction or industrial development project in the city, approving a plan for such project, authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to execute certain documents related thereto, and take certain other actions or as necessary or desirable to carry out and comply with the intent hereof. Board Bill 140, sponsored by Alderman Browning, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the issuance and delivery of one or more series of tax incremental revenue notes, including RPA 4 tax increment revenue notes in an aggregated amount not to exceed $4 million plus cost of issuance, approving a third amended to amend and restated redevelopment agreement, approving the ninth supplemental trust indenture in connection with the issuance of RPA 4 notes, authorizing and directing and taking up of other actions and approval and execution of other documents as necessary or desirable to carry out and comply with the intent hereof, authorizing certain actions by certain officials of the city containing the severability clause. Board Bill 141, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderman Cone, Alderman Browning, Alderwoman Sanier, and Alderman Aldridge. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller of the City of St. Louis on behalf of the city to enter into and execute an agreement or agreements with the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, Office of Healthy Homes, and Lead Hazard Control, being offered pursuant to federal fiscal year 2024 Notice of Funding Availability for the Lead Hazard Reduction Demonstration Grant Program, directing the comptroller to issue warrants thereon upon the city treasury containing an emergency clause. That's the extent of second reading report of standing committees.
Madam Clerk, if you could please make sure I'm added as a co-sponsor in 128 as amended in 141.
So noted.
Alderman from the 9th, you're recognized on the motion to suspend the rules for the purpose of Board Bills 139 and 140 from second reading to the regular perfection calendar.
Thank you. I would move that we pass Board Bill, or that we suspend the rules to move Board Bill 139 and 140 to the regular perfection calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 9th, seconded by the Alderman from the 5th, that we suspend the rules for the purposes of moving Board Bills 139 and 140 from second reading to the regular perfection calendar. This is a non-debatable motion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg, Alderman Cone. Aye. Alderman Orion. Alderman Balmer. Aye. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanier. Alderwoman Spencer. Aye. Alderman Browning. Aye. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Aye. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
No.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. 12 aye votes and 2 no votes.
By your vote, you've sustained the motion from the Alderman from the 9th. Madam Clerk, if you could please place Board Bills 139 and 140 at the end of the regular perfection calendar.
So noted.
Report of special committees.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 15. Board Bills for perfection consent.
Board Bill 132, sponsored by Alderman Cone, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller of the City of St. Louis, owner and operator of St. Louis Lambert International Airport, to enter into and execute the First Amendment to West and East Substation Lease Agreement with Union Electric, which originally authorized ordinance number 69920, approved January the 15th, 2015, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 136, sponsored by Alderman Cone, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Comptroller, the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, making findings respecting the transfer of a maximum of $13,272,769 of excessive monies that the City of St. Louis intends to transfer from the Debt Service Stabilization Fund to the Airport Revenue Fund during fiscal year 2025, containing the severability clause. That's the extent of board bills for perfection, the consent calendar.
Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the motion to adopt the board bills for the perfection consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we adopt the board bills for perfection consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt the board bills for the perfection consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Board bills for perfection.
Board Bill 137, sponsored by Alderwoman Velazquez, President Green, and Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. An ordinance establishing a municipal identification card program in the City of St. Louis to provide all residents access to reorganized form of government-issued photo identification.
Alderwoman from the 6th, you are recognized on the perfection of Board Bill 137.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to perfect Board Bill 137.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we perfect Board Bill 137. Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. This bill really does two things. One, there is a sense of urgency. In the past 2 years, more than 5,000 people have sought to obtain a photo ID in the city, sought to obtain access to an identification in the city of St. Louis. The second part of this ID is a grander vision of St. Louis that is an ID that can be welcoming, like we've seen in cities like Chicago and Detroit, where this ID can be a tool that where people can get to know the city more. But before I get to talk about the details of this bill in discussion, I want to move to adopt Amendment 1 to Board Bill 137, which is on everybody's desk.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we adopt Amendment number 1 to Board Bill 137. Alderwoman, you may proceed on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam President. So I will go into the details of the bill, but this amendment, if you all watched the hearing and legislation rules about this bill, one question that both Alderman Vollmer and Alderman Narayan had during the hearing was, what kind of proof of identification would this ID use? And this amendment simply seeks to clarify what kind of documents can and will be used by the program administrator, which is the treasurer. So Amendment 1 seeks to really does clarify some of the kinds of documents that could be used to show proof of identity as well as proof of residency. So with that, I renew my motion to adopt Amendment 1 to Board Bill 137.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we adopt Amendment number 1 to Board Bill 137. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Alderwoman, you may proceed on Board Bill 137 as amended.
Great. Thank you, Madam President. So Board Bill 137 establishes what we call the Gateway Card. The Gateway Card would be a municipal identification, a city ID card that would be a photo ID that would be accessible to all residents of the city of St. Louis. It would be good. It would be valid for adults for 10 years, for minors for 5 years, and it would be indefinite, would not expire for seniors over 65 years. And you might be asking, why should we do this now and why is this important? Well, as I mentioned before, in the past 2 years, nonprofit organizations, more than 5,000 people have sought access to get an ID in the city of St. Louis. Of those people that have not been able to get an ID, over 64% of them cannot access banking services. 72% of those folks report not being able to get a job, and a significant portion of those residents cite transportation as a big hurdle. So really what the biggest part of this ID, when we talk about wanting to improve access to, wanting to empower people economically and really make sure that everybody can participate in not only our community but our economy, you do that by being able to rent an apartment, by being able to get a job, and being able to open up a bank account. And so this ID can help people do that. There are also other things that an ID does as opposed to not having ID. For example, community safety and trust. Simply, if you are in a car accident or maybe stopped by police, it is safer if you have a piece of identification than if you do not have a piece of identification. There have also been some studies in other places with municipal IDs that it can create a positive interaction between the community and law enforcement by being able to have access to an ID. And certainly we've seen this in our sister city in St. Louis and Kansas City. They just launched their municipal ID program in January. They call it the Fountain ID. Since then, over 6,000 IDs have been issued just this year alone. So while we have budgeted for 7,500 like Kansas City, I believe that that shows, in addition to what we've seen in St. Louis, that there is a need that is documented that people have for this ID. Another concern, that we've talked about with this bill is that it would be done, the program administrator would be the treasurer's office. We've worked closely with the office of the treasurer in not only developing the legislation, but knowing that the treasurer's office has listened to the voice of community in doing this. Also, we've talked to the treasurer about, potential fraud concerns and how they would implement this. So, with their experience in both having technology and basically IT, how they do their, computing infrastructure, they're well aware of all the safety precautions they would need to take to implement. So I know that folks may have questions. The budget would come from part of the treasurer's annual budget of general funds, and it would be implemented in 180 days. And we anticipate, we work with the budget director during the appropriations process to do this, but this ID, again, has community support, but also there is a real need, and again, the bigger vision of, can we have a fun, exciting way that people can get to know the city and partnerships for there to be a different way for people to access St. Louis. So this ID is not just for those who might be what we consider the most on the margins of society, but an ID that everyone can have that will get us discounts at restaurants and have different things that are accessible to everyone. So with that, I will yield to questions from my colleagues.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I'm supportive of this concept, certainly. We had a good discussion in committee on this, and I think we're certainly on the right trajectory here. I think it's inherently a good thing for people to be able to present identification, and this will help with that. I do have some just underlying concerns, though, and I think that we could improve on this bill. I don't see the rush to get this through right now, to perfect this today. I think that we can spend some more time on it. Part of the concern that I brought up in committee, and I still have, is the overall cost of this program. In committee, we went over the idea that we expected about 7,000 people to get this ID in year one, and then it would taper down substantially from there. At those costs, we're looking at hundreds of dollars per unit when we're standing up this entire program. I think that we could accomplish a lot of the same goals for far less money if we continue to look at the nuts and bolts of this. I think also there's some consideration that needs to be made on whether we're putting cart before the horse when it comes to some of the community partnerships. There's discussion about unbanked people and that this would help. A lot of financial institutions aren't going to take this as an identification when it comes to up a bank account. I of course, am supportive of everyone who wants a bank account having one, but I'm just not sure that this actually gets us there. We're talking about future partnerships. I would like to see, for this cost, I'd like to see some of those partnerships in place and know that when we roll this out, it's going to be a successful program. And it's not going to be, $800,000 going towards an ID that doesn't help people vote, doesn't let people drive, doesn't let people open a bank account. We don't know to what extent employers are going to accept this as an ID. I just think we're not there with it yet. I'm absolutely supportive of the underlying concept. But I can't support this today, although if the conversation continues, I'm certainly here for the conversation. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 11th.
So I am in agreement with Brethren Narayan on this particular bill. Having worked in an industry for 13 years, owning my own company, dealing directly with biometrics and identification cards. And I had this discussion with Alderwoman Velasquez. I think that the initial cost is way understated as opposed to the actual cost of this. There was some discussion about being able to swipe this card in some point in time. When we talk about hardware, software, who's going to accept it, who's not going to accept it, we are really dealing with a lot of money. When we begin to talk about the design of the card, having certain marks or embedded chips, we are talking a lot of money. We haven't even discussed on the software or hardware side of what does that machine that does that function look like? What is the design cost? Supportive of this to a degree, but I have to be realistic about what my own personal knowledge is about what the overall cost is and what the overall benefit is. I think that more work needs to be done on this, that, possibly legal services of some of the other agencies, legal services of Eastern Missouri, or others who may be able to assist those who are having challenges or impediments to getting identification. I think that the thoughtfulness about having something like this it could be a good thing, but I just don't think that this has been fully fleshed out, and especially when we look at the cost and then ongoing technical and software support for this, because this is technology. Let's be real about that. When you start talking about a card that's going to be used for identification, and IDs are faked so often today, there has to be different things added into that card, that software, that will make it difficult for someone else with nefarious purposes to duplicate and use that identification. I do applaud Alderwoman Velasquez for all of her work on this, but I think that when we look at the overall cost to our taxpayers, that this is really something that can escalate very quickly when we begin to really put this thing into practice. So that's as much as I want to say right now. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 1st.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Would the Alderwoman from the 6th, yield for questions? So used to asking the Alderman from the 7th questions, I guess.
Yes.
The Alderwoman from the 6th yields questioning from the Alderwoman from the 1st.
Yes. Can I respond to the Alderwoman from the 11th's comments before we?
No.
Not yet.
Okay.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to go through the fiscal note with you just because I think when we talk about the cost, we have it in the bill, which I appreciate it being so thorough. So I'm seeing the first year 7,500 IDs and a year one $280,497 for supplies and an additional. I can't see. Alicia, sorry, do you mind? And then an additional, over 3 years, an additional $270,000 of cost. But if I just calculate $7,500 IDs into the first year supply cost, I'm only coming up with $37 per ID. And people are saying the word hundreds, and I'm seeing $37. I mean, have you figured out cost of ID?
Right. The cost of ID is actually there. So I do want to say that just overall, I just want to preface that we actually did do a lot of work on this, and these numbers are directly from Kansas City. So, and we talked with their office, so they're not pie in the sky, not researched, not numbers that we generated from the ether. They're actually the cost that this is what it costs to implement in Kansas City right now. So this is not a cost that we made up. This is including software, hardware, all of that.
Right.
So the cost per ID, the ID card you see is $1 each.
No, I mean in total. So like if I'm a person, because you said hundreds of dollars per ID, like I'm trying to say if I walk in to get an ID, I'm one of 7,500 people. My total cost is around
no cost
$40.
to you.
No. To issue me an ID per unit, to issue the ID in total, when you look at the cost of $280,000 per the first year, plus a portion of the $270,000 assumed for 3 years of salary, you add those amounts together. Let's say it's a third of the $270,000 in a year. So it's 50, 75, 8. So let's just say that it comes out to about $50 to have the whole program. When you're a person who's using it, your unit cost about $50. So I'm just saying when people say it'll cost hundreds of dollars per unit, the math is saying closer to 50. Is that your understanding, or have you done that particular math?
I have not done that particular math. I can do it right now. It sounds like
I just think it's important because when you talk about, how much something costs per person, and I've gone back and forth on this, 10 times in the last week and a half, I think. And so those, I think, are, to me, important numbers to not just say hundreds of dollars per unit, but actually know how much we're talking about. And then in the amendment we did earlier, a lot of these, and we talked a little bit about this, are IDs that could be used for any of those issues that you mentioned someone might need an ID for. So they're using an ID that would already help them across so many of the issues that you laid out. But there's some in here that wouldn't work for getting a state ID. Can you talk a little bit as to the importance of that availability of an ID in those cases? Let's say if someone maybe only has a utility bill in their name, or only has
Sure,
a letter from a government or social agency addressed to them. I mean, that's not something you could get a state issued ID or a federal ID with, but it's listed as one of the options in here.
Right. Thank you, Alderwoman. So the idea of some of the municipal ID is to essentially, why we still want to make sure that we are protecting for fraud and that we are making sure that people are using their correct identity, is to essentially lower the barrier to get an ID and make it more accessible. So some of the qualifying documents that are in the amendment are things like release release bracelet from the Justice Center. I'd have to pull up my amendment here. Some of the ones that might be less. I'm sorry. Yes. I'm looking. I'm seemingly less official. A current city Justice Center wristband or other identifying document, medical discharge paperwork or hospital discharge visit documentation. We have a little bit, we give the administrator a little bit of room for other documentation. Missouri Department of Corrections, or the equivalent of a prison or state ID papers. What we've heard from community, what we heard in testimony is that some people, maybe not you and me, and maybe not the average, what seemingly the average person, might be in situations where they may not be able to access these IDs. They may be in situations where they may be in the immediate threat of harm. What we've heard too is that part of the important part of the program is that it is a one-day, one-stop shop. So you get the ID the same day you apply, you get it, you leave, you apply, and you have the ID when you leave. That's important if you're in a situation where you're experiencing intimate or domestic partner violence and you may not know where you're going to be in 2 weeks. That 2 weeks waiting period that if you're trying to get a state ID mailed to you, you may not have 2 weeks. If you're in a situation where you may be unhoused or housing insecure, you may not have those 2 weeks. Particularly what we've heard too for when it comes to minors and issues with being able to register for schools, you may not have that time. So having that flexibility in some of that documentation is important for these folks who may be in situations where they just are unable to get that ID. We also heard during testimony situations where, because of that waiting period, there's somebody who may be able to get a job, but they need an ID for that application. And so there is more flexibility in it very specifically while trying to while making sure that we're still identifying people's true identification, but creating a way that there's more latitude for them to get the ID that they need to do to fully participate in our society.
Okay, and I apologize, I misspoke earlier. Your fiscal note includes salary in these numbers here.
Yes.
So that's important because then it is about $37 per person who walks out of there with an ID that maybe couldn't have gotten it before. Okay.
Right. And what I've discussed with Treasurer Lane, is that, depending on the need of the program, we can always, it is an estimate, right? So if we find that we don't need the full staff that's on here, we don't have to hire the full staff. If we can cut costs on year 2, then we cut costs on year 2.
Right. I can see that happening with being in a situation in which Kansas City, who, may be issuing more of these than we would, is doing 6,000 in their first year. It's very likely that St. Louis is going to be doing less than that. So I would imagine an adjustment would, take place in which these salaries wouldn't all be needed. That's 3.5 people to do this. Seems like a lot. I know in the neighborhood stabilization office, their ID machines sit without being used all day long. And we're having here buying 3 more ID creators, but they're doing different things. The
right,
ID
and I think it's to fully have that office staff. Now, could we change the hour? Could we change the hours, have less staff? Again, that changes the accessibility. What we also, we heard from the social ministry at St. Francis Xavier during committee, and they've been doing this work for 30 years, and they're open 1 day a week, and during the freezing cold, they had 60 people waiting outside their door around the block, and they're only open 1 day a week, right? So I think we want to find the balance of making sure, if the whole point is to be accessible, but I think we are all cost aware. I would hope that the treasurer also, is being responsible for a good portion of the bean counting, is also cost aware, that we want to find that balance between being accessible, because that is the goal of the program. I don't take presenting a no-cost program lightly, but we also want to be able to serve those people who just don't have the ability right now, that this is one of the hang-ups one of the barriers they have from stopping them from fully participating in our community, to have that, not because, we're closed.
And of course, this is a bill allowing the program to start, and allowing the treasurer to basically, treasurer could do things on his own. He wouldn't need us to pass a bill if he wanted to run this within his own office without, need us to approve his budget and everything like that. But this is a bill, it would still need to go through the regular budget process when the treasurer comes in front and says, to start this program, we're going to need this amount of money. So even though you have numbers in here, it doesn't mean that's what's going to be spent on the program. You've just done, trying to make it as conservative feels like the wrong word, because I'm trying to say that you've tried to account for any possible costs as opposed to pretending that the cost might not be there. So, but in reality, this could cost and probably would cost less money in its first year. I think in this budget cycle going forward, people are going to be looking at how can you do things in a more scrappy way. So we might not be super interested in putting the amount that you've put in this fiscal note into the program, and then adjustments would be made to do what you could with that amount, I would imagine, like any other
that's
department.
accurate.
Okay, thank you for answering so many of my questions.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I rise in support of the bill. I do think this is a really good concept that the Alderwoman is trying to bring to city government, and I know especially as we look at potential changes of administration on the federal level, how this can help so many vulnerable communities, if it's our unhoused or LGBTQIA community. I do think some of the questions that was raised from my colleagues, especially like the alderman from the 4th, is valid. Doesn't mean that I don't think we should vote for it. As far as it would be good just to know, from what banks will actually accept this, because what we don't want to do is, as it is out there and people are watching, and there's media here that says that we pass this and residents will be able to use this for X, Y, and Z, and then they can't. I know on a separate bill, we're getting off topic a little bit. I don't know how many other colleagues, but I've been recently getting a lot of calls from seniors on the senior tax freeze, how we framed it that they were going to save a lot of money. In reality, they only got like 78 cents, and some people actually had to pay more money back. So I do think with the Board of Aldermen having several more sessions before we go down, I think when we come back in January, it's the last time to file a bill. We will have a shorter session this year, but I know all my colleagues down here have always been willing to try to work collaboratively to get things done. And I would ask Alderwoman from the 6th, would she yield for questions?
The Alderwoman from the 6th yield to questioning from the Alderman from the 14th.
Yes.
How you doing, Alderwoman?
I'm well. How are you, Alderman?
Good, good. First, I do want to commend you for this innovative piece of legislation. I know, is it Kansas City that has utilized this program as well?
Kansas City just launched their program in January. Chicago has had a program since, I'd have to check, I think 2017. New York has had a program since 2014. Detroit just relaunched their program. I just read a paper from the Federal Reserve talking about the relationship between municipal IDs and unbanked. New Orleans just relaunched their program. And I'm sure I'm missing a few, but there are several cities in the country that have a municipal ID program.
Okay. Can you explain how they use these programs, I guess, in other cities, of how they use these IDs that are not the typical state ID?
Sure. I mean, they're essentially twofold. They're usually an ID for people who may have difficulties or face obstacles getting a traditional state ID, and then they're also used as a device for welcoming and inclusion. So we even heard in testimony somebody talked about how their sister moved to New York and they got all sorts of discounts at museums and restaurants through the NYCID, which is their ID program. Chicago's is the Chicago Key program. Its ID is it started as just a simple ID, as this bill proposes, but it has a bunch of other components now. That ID serves as its transit card, it's its library card. It's also has it's associated with a host of different discounts. There are different relationships with banking institutions in Chicago as well. So they're typically both an ID for people who might face barriers and also a welcome to our city. Here's a guide and here's a card and let's make it fun. And, kind of not a scavenger hunt, but, here's our partner, here's different partners in collaborating in things that make our city great.
Gotcha. So this is coming from the treasurer's department.
Yes, it would be operated, the treasurer would be the program administrator, and it would come from the treasurer's budget.
Okay. And I think one kind of difference, because the treasurer's office is unique, they do have like the parking department, which is under the treasurer's office, but the actual treasurer, I think department may, if I'm not mistaken, some of those funds come from general revenue. So would the funds be coming from his office, or would it be coming from the general revenue?
It would be coming from the office's general revenue.
That the city funds.
Right, it would not be coming from their revenue from parking or anything that they generate in their office. It would come from those funds the general funds that the percentage of they contribute to the city's general funds would be from essentially our general revenue, but it would be requested from their office as part of their budget.
Gotcha. And I know we've talked about this, never try to shock people ahead of time. I know we've talked about the legislation, and I totally, like I say, I'm with it. If we were to vote it out today, I do think there's still probably a lot of outstanding questions before probably people on third reading would be willing to vote it out, even including myself. And I've been one of those people where a bill got to third reading several times. I had to pull it back and then get it to third reading and pull it back. I would just maybe suggest, and I'll be willing to help you on it, maybe putting it on the informal calendar so we can just work through some of the kinks. Like I say, if you do move forward with it today, I'll be voting yes, but I think there's just, and other people I think that may vote yes will just have some outstanding questions which may change the legislation at third reading, which means we have to put it back on perfection. But ultimately, I do commend your hard work on this, and whatever way that I could be a help as the legislation move, even while we're on break. Clearly, we're having meetings while we're on break, so we're not on break. I'll be willing to help. So that's just my 2 cents, and also appreciate, like I said, your commitment on this piece of legislation.
Thank you. I just also want to call to the fact that we just got an estimate. So the same software that Kansas City uses, the professional software, which is called Entrust, is $1,300 a year. That's the professional version. So again, I just want to actually reiterate what Alderwoman Schweitzer said. I mean, why maybe the fiscal note is on the high end. I do believe that we have done our due diligence in actually researching the actual costs of what it could be. I mean, a bunch of the bulk of the costs are the staff salaries, but the actual software professional version is $1,300 a year.
Yeah, and not to and this is something
it's a very detailed thing that we're arguing about. We're discussing the cost of software, but it is $1,300 a year for the professional version of the software that is used to
I think it's some
administer
folks,
this ID program.
And I'm not mad at them. It's some folks that want to make sure that we are being good stewards of the city money, and that we don't create a program that end up later down the line, if we're here or not, become an issue. But I appreciate you doing your research. Something that actually I thought about earlier that I didn't bring up to you. I know the city, and not trying to change our legislation, we do have where you get your ID cards from, the city could also be a good department where we don't have to buy equipment and all that. But all that being said, I guess I appreciate you on this. I would recommend putting it on the informal calendar as you're the alderwoman, but it is up to you. But appreciate you for taking the inquiry.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 6th, you are recognized to close.
Thank you, Madam President. With that, I renew my motion to perfect Board Bill 137 as amended.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we perfect Board Bill 137 as amended. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg, Alderman Cone, Alderman Narayan, Alderman Balmer, Alderwoman Velazquez, Alderwoman Sanye, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Browning, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderwoman Keys, Alderwoman Tyus,
No.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge, President Green,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg, Alderman Cone.
Aye.
12 aye votes and 2 no votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderwoman from the 6th to perfect Board Bill 137.
Board Bill 139, introduced by Alderman Browning, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment authorizing the City of St. Louis to issue its taxable industrial development revenue bonds in the principal amount of not to exceed $36 million for the purpose of providing funds to pay the cost of constructing an industrial development project in the city, approving a plan for such project, authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to execute certain documents related thereto, take certain other actions as are necessary or desirable to carry out and comply with the intent hereof.
Alderman from the 9th, you are recognized on the perfection of Board Bill 139.
Thank you. So I'd move to perfect Board Bill 139.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 9th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 1st, that we perfect Board Bill 139. Alderman.
Thank you. So Board Bill 139 starts with the story of a company that is called C2N Diagnostics. This is a company that was founded here in St. Louis by 2 Washington University researchers. It makes a test that allows us to analyze whether Alzheimer's drugs are working. That is, in other words, drugs that help slow and stop the advancement of Alzheimer's. And what this test is it's an inexpensive and non-invasive way to check how these are working in a patient and help adjust dosage or change, the treatment plan as needed so that these people can go on to live healthy and happy lives. It's a very, very exciting advancement in this field. It really speaks to the investment that's been done in St. Louis to grow our neuroscience field and to make sure that we are providing not only the assistance to researchers to create this technology, but then also the assistance for them to grow. What has happened now is C2N has found success in its product and is set to make a big difference in this area of research, and they are growing. However, they are outgrowing their space. In Cortex, they are in a small office right now, but they are looking to grow into a large company, and they need the lab space to do that. Unfortunately, St. Louis currently does not have the modern lab space to house this kind of operation. And if we do not build it, they will move to a different city. So right now we are in a position where we are in competition with Colorado and Chicago in whether we can keep this company or not. You should all have fact sheets on your desks that point out some of the things about this project. But essentially, there's a couple pieces to it today. We've got Board Bill 139, which is a sales tax exemption on project equipment and construction materials. I think there's been some confusion around this, thinking that this is a property tax abatement, but this is a personal property tax abatement, like equipment. This is construction equipment that we're talking about, construction materials being used to build out this lab space that's expected to provide 172 jobs for St. Louis with an average salary of $92,000. So this is a fantastic thing for St. Louis, not just in terms of being able to grow, and provide space for a homegrown company here, but also providing high-paying, skilled jobs that range everywhere from the scientists to all the way down to the glass washers. This is making sure that we keep that company here in St. Louis, that we provide opportunities for people to grow, and this just simply helps build out this space that doesn't exist yet, and making sure that we can have that space for everybody. This scored very high on the community benefits scorecard with a score of 51, which is the third and highest tier. And while construction has begun on this building already, it will stop if we do not provide this support from our city. This is very expensive to build out, and the university and Cortex are taking a big risk in trying to make sure that we can provide this space. But if the company fails, they're the ones who are going to really bear that burden. They're the ones who are going to lose their money. The city, however, will not be in any worse position if this company fails. However, if we provide this and or if we don't provide this and the city moves on and the company moves on, then we lose out on all those jobs, we lose out on all that progress, and worse, we send a message that we are not interested in keeping companies that we grew here. That's Board Bill 139. I will wait to talk about Board Bill 140, which is the issuance of a TIF note when we get to that, but that's part of the same project. And the only thing I'll say on that is just that this is an existing TIF. So those of you who are unfamiliar with what Cortex is or just need a refresher, Cortex started as a 200-acre site where the city made an agreement with the institutions that are supporting Cortex to say, hey, we want to build out an area here that really creates something special in our city, that creates jobs, that creates job training for people, and really helps move our city forward. And as a result, Cortex is the master developer of these 200 acres. They go out and they try to fill their area with things that the city asked for. And that's what C2N is today, that is one of those companies that the city has been after, that we'd like to fill this space, and that we'd like to provide an opportunity to grow here. In addition to C2N occupying this space, they will be the anchor tenant, but this will also provide additional lab space for us to provide even more jobs that will help our residents grow and build lives here. So at the end of the day, I think this is a wonderful deal for the city. I think this is a really big get, and it puts St. Louis on the map in a really good way. And I'm happy to take any questions that you all have on this. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 6th.
Thank you, Madam President. Will the alderman from the 10th? 9th, sorry. Sorry, alderwoman from the 10th. May I inquire of the alderman from the 9th?
Alderman from the 9th, would you yield to questioning from the alderwoman from the 6th?
Yes.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. Alderman Browning, I'm not on the HUD's committee, so I've been hit with a flurry of emails and a flurry of conversation about the series of bills. So can you just, I think for the sake of the board and for the sake of the public at home, just sort of explain the process? I know you just outlined this, but there seemed to be some concern about the delay in communication of the materials, particularly to the HUD's community and HUD's committee, and just it sounds like some confusion, and I think what people perceive as a lack of transparency, which may actually be part of the confusion. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I understand that people are rightfully concerned about the tools that we use in the city to provide development support that it needs to actually happen here in our city. And so that kind of caution, I think, is very warranted, and I appreciate that people are concerned about that. I am too. I want to make sure that people understand exactly what this is, though. And this gets into 140 a little bit, but what this is it's a TIF that was activated about 2 years ago. As I mentioned, Cortex has these different, what they call RPAs. They're different development zones within the district that they activate when they're ready to do something with it. this was something that was agreed on with the city, so we're just trying to continue that mission that was created so long ago at this point. 2 years ago, we were up against a deadline. The TIF was about to expire for RPA 4, so as they activated another RPA, they also requested to activate this RPA with the promise that they would come back with the details when they were ready to move. So that's what this is today, is we are coming back with the details. You'll find those details in Resolution 203, which includes the project details all the way down to the economic analysis and all the details about financing and everything else. But what we have here is a situation where the sales tax exemption, as you know, sales tax exemptions do not impact the taxing districts in a major way. Most of the construction materials are purchased outside the city, and specialized equipment that will be going to this project usually comes from outside the city as well. So the impact to the city or the school districts in this area is very small. However, this is a very important thing to be able to help build out that space and create that specialized lab space for the company. The other thing I'll mention is that while I don't have the number on exactly what this will bring, I can tell you, Cortex has been a huge contributor to our tax base and our taxing districts here in the city. Over its period between 2014 and 2022, $16.6 million to our public schools. A total of $105 million to our taxing district. So this is just a continuation of that, but more importantly, it brings those jobs, it brings those opportunities, and it keeps these companies here, which is what St. Louis needs to communicate to companies that not only start here, but also companies that want to come here, is that, hey, we're going to have space for you to grow, to do this cutting edge research, and to actually provide that opportunity for people to really make their mark here. I anticipate headlines coming out of St. Louis related to Alzheimer's because of the work being done not only in Cortex but at the new neuroscience center that is one of the largest in the I think it's one of the largest on the continent right now. So there's a lot of misinformation about this, but I want to clarify that this is a sales tax exemption. 139 is a sales tax exemption on equipment and construction materials. It is not a property tax.
Thank you. I do just want to say for the record, I don't know at which points we got a few of these pieces of legislation to go through. I am excited. I think this is a good project, and I think it could open up a lot of things for St. Louis. I also, just for the folks at C2N, just from the government side, transparency is a good thing, and revealing who you are sooner than later is in the best interest of everybody. And just from a legislative perspective, I am disappointed that they made things more complicated than they needed to be. So I just want to put that on the record. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to that point, I was, in my past work, I've worked with researchers, and researchers are not always the face of their inventions, right? They're there to do the science. They might not be there to do the complicated business transactions or any of that other things. I know that this negotiation was intense. I know that we were competing with other cities and trying to make sure that we could land this company here. As a result, a lot of these negotiations had to be done in secret, and that's not the way we prefer to do things, but it is the reality that we sometimes live in. When this went before the TIF Commission, the name of the company was not available yet, but it was available when we heard it in HUDs, and we were able to acknowledge that and talk about this company and who they are. You're able to look them up on the web, see what they do. I would say that Washington University and Cortex and the whole city really feels confident in this company's ability to succeed. That's why the institutions in question are taking the risk of backing this company up. And again, if it fails, they're the ones who will take that loss. It won't be the city. But if we fail to provide the necessary support, that loss will be on us, and we'll have chased these jobs out of town, which just would make me terribly sad, because I think we need to provide opportunity for people in this city. If we want to talk about, kids being able to grow up and be able to succeed in this city and not move away, not have that brain drain, then we need to provide these type of opportunities in the city so that people can build their lives here.
No, I agree, and I think we have obviously a topical question, and I think there's a larger question after this of how do we, obviously this kind of, in my mind, put a little spotlight on St. Louis needs to be competitive. We need to be better at being competitive. So we've got to figure out different processes that make sure that we can be nimble and be competitive, but then also be transparent and still be able to, move quickly. And so I just, I want to state that for the record. I know I've got constituents who are frustrated with this process and I think disappointed. And also at the same time, I think we have to look at the bigger picture, as you're saying, is these are the proposal, from what I understand, is that it's a business-wise, it's a risky, not a risky business because that's a movie, but a risky proposition in some ways. It's a high-risk project to take on, and that's why the TIF is being proposed, and that's why Cortex took on this project. And also it's, I think, what did you say, 172 jobs with an average salary of $92,000, and I heard that some of these jobs don't even necessarily require a college degree, but require a certificate, which are the kinds of jobs that we want to have in the city. So just, for all of us and for all those listening, and especially those involved in negotiation and business deals, we need to be competitive, but that shouldn't come at the cost of transparency, and the people have the right to know. And we need to make sure that we're nimble if we're going to attract and grow businesses to the city. So
Absolutely agreed. I think there is a lot the city could do better on, both on the side of being competitive and at the same time allowing for that transparency. So I think we share the goal.
Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I don't know if all of my colleagues had the opportunity to watch the HUD's hearing, but we, did have a nice conversation. I do believe that this is a good project. The questions that I asked in committee were about the fact that this would create, right now they have a facility that is in St. Louis that has about 20 jobs. This would create an additional 150 jobs. With a pay range ranging from $55,000 to $125,000, and so I think that's really good. We talked about, as a part of the TIF, 10% of it is, going to, I think, an infrastructure fund, so that's really positive. But I do, I've gotten a series of emails, a series of phone calls, and even in HUD's committee uplifted this issue. I spoke with President Richardson and Vice President Wilson about this as well. I do want to be transparent and put on the record that we did get the package at 10:47 a.m. and we had HUDs at 11 a.m. And so for me, while we talk about growing our city and developing our city in committee, I was really torn because, yes, I think this is a great project. Yes, I think that it would, have good outcomes for the city. Alzheimer's is difficult, and the company is doing great work to potentially be able to identify some key indicators from blood tests, which is extraordinary. However, at the same time, as a HUD's committee and as a body, I think that it is disrespectful to give a committee a package over an incentive 13 minutes before the hearing takes place. I think that it is hard to tell our residents and tell our constituents that as boards of aldermen and as HUD's committee members and as a board, we're doing our due diligence when we get information at the last minute. And I was especially disturbed by that because on the actual package that was sent to us, there's actually a date that says March. So I'm not sure if it was created in March. Why were we unable to get it, only able to get it 13 minutes before the hearing? In addition to the fact, I hope that SLDC is watching, and I will irradiate it to them that you put us in difficult positions, because then the conversation becomes, well, the board doesn't want to support development. The board doesn't support business. I want to support development, I want to support business, but I also want us to have the opportunity to do our proper oversight and do our due diligence. And there's no way that you can send information 13 minutes before a hearing and ask us to take a vote. You're not giving me an opportunity to talk to my constituents who have good, rightful questions about these processes and suspicions. You're not putting me in the best position to defend these things. So I don't think that these things are a result of Alderman Browning or his work or are a hit on the project itself. But I do think that, I hope all of us will encourage SODC and developers when they come before us to understand that we do need to be in position to do an actual analysis and that we need the respect and the opportunity to do so. I did say this on record during the committee hearing, so I just wanted to make sure that I also say that on the record on the floor for us today and just kind of explain those pieces that were lingering. So I don't have an inquiry for you, Alderman Browning, because we've had plenty of conversations and talks about it, and I think you understand where I am, and I understand where you are, and I do understand, I don't think it's a fault of your own, but I do think that in this instance, the St. Louis Development Corporation made a big error, and I certainly hope that they don't put us in this position again.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I agree with the alderman from the 9th that this is exciting stuff for C2N. Coming up with a blood test that tests for these things is it's going to make some serious advances for the medical community and for people with Alzheimer's. I bet that they're going to make a bunch of money off it too, and I think that's something that we should be looking at. I basically on every one of these incentives, I don't think it's surprising what I'm going to say to anyone. Would the alderman from the 9th yield for questions, please?
The alderman from the 9th yield to questioning from the alderman from the 4th.
Yes.
Thank you. So C2N doesn't own this building, do they?
That's correct.
Who does own the building?
I believe it's owned by an LLC.
Okay. And do you know who owns that LLC?
Yeah, I think the university owns it, but it's under one of the for-profit.
Okay.
So the building is paying taxes.
And do you know the construction company that would do this work if these incentives go through?
Packet. That up real quick. I think it's in the detailed project plan that is in the resolution. We'll be working with.
Do you know if the construction company is affiliated with the university?
I believe they are. Yeah.
Okay. And how many tax dollars does the university pay?
That's a really complicated question between earnings tax and different real estate holdings that are under different LLCs, for-profit arms. It's something that I think you'd have to ask the university. What I can say is that on this project and with all Cortex itself is a nonprofit, so I want to make that clear. This is meant to facilitate the growth of new companies and researchers who come up with ideas. I can't help that Washington University is the the entity that these researchers work for.
I certainly don't blame you all.
But I think that when we have this conversation about what does the university bring to our city, it's easy to focus on what they don't pay. It's a little harder to focus on what they do bring. But I can tell you, in my ward, really for the whole city, the amount of investment that goes on behind the scenes is something that often is not really talked about. As I mentioned, they are taking on the risk in this project. Building out this building for this tenant, and specifically for this tenant, is a risk. The balance sheets and all that, we want to make sure that this company, they have a fantastic product. They have a fantastic idea. And how many times have we seen somebody with a fantastic product and a fantastic idea lose out to somebody who was just simply better? I think of, Alan Turing and Thomas Edison, right? Whose name is more famous? But this is one of those things where we have a chance to use this tool that we created for ourselves in St. Louis, which is Cortex, to create this space to fill out what, and I know you've been around long enough to remember what Cortex looked like before this all started, but to actually create this exciting space where people can grow and build this. And like I said, imagine these tests are being sold out of St. Louis, and like you said, it has the potential to make a lot of money. That's also potential income for St. Louis. So really landing these companies here, just as St. Louis needs its institutions, just as we need Anheuser-Busch and we need all these other big institutions that provide so many jobs here, we also need the universities, and we also need Cortex, and we also need to land companies like C2N.
And thank you for that. And the but-for test is something that we talk about a lot here. And would this project happen if not for the incentives? And I just have a hard time believing, and I know what the developer says, I just have a hard time believing that you start a construction project before the incentives and you say, well, I'm not gonna do it if you don't give me incentives. I think they're in the middle of doing it. You mentioned that the risk of loss is on Cortex and the university and not on us during this, but I think what we're failing to take into account is that the loss of projects like these, it's really the children that live in the city of St. Louis who are the real losers here, because we're giving huge dollars to a company that's going to make a lot of money, and for every one of those dollars, we're taking 60 cents from kids in SLPS. I just feel like this is, as the alderwoman from the 7th pointed out, I feel like this is rushed. I feel like it was sprung on us, and I'm not coming at you on this, but I feel like it was sprung on us. I feel like there's been a real lack of transparency. I don't know why. I don't know what the sudden rush is on documents, as was pointed out, have been around since March, apparently, and now we get them 13 minutes before a hearing, and then we're accelerating the timeline here. I virtually never vote for this type of incentive, and this one won't be any different, but I urge my colleagues to consider SLPS in this, particularly now while they're going through their own financial difficulties. And we need to take a hard look at what we're prioritizing here, because both are important. The business community is important. They bring a lot of revenue in, but we often talk about how we're keeping families in the city, and robbing Peter to pay Paul just isn't the way, in my estimation. And I won't stand up on the next one and talk again, because I'll just be repeating the same points. But thank you for your time, Alderman, and with that, I yield.
Well, thank you, and I just want to point that the sales tax exemption, again, has very little impact on taxing districts in St. Louis. The TIF is already activated and is the tool that was given to Cortex a long time ago to build this out. I think that when we look at the construction starting, I mean, we've all seen a stalled construction project, right? We've all seen a project that started, ran out of money, and then just that. I think taking the risk on starting the construction was certainly something that was done, but, failing to provide the support necessary here would leave the building not converted to that crucial lab space that we need, not just for this company, but for luring and keeping other companies here. So I don't view this so much as robbing Peter to pay Paul, but I view it more as we're building for the future. We're planting the seeds of the trees that we want to provide shade in the future. And this is part of the basic building work that you have to do in a city to provide that opportunity. It's one thing for kids to get an education here. It's another thing for them to be able to have jobs when they grow up. So we want to make sure that we're building that tax revenue for the schools, that we're building that tax revenue for the city. And that's essentially what we're doing here. The company is for profit. The company will be paying taxes. So we stand to gain a lot from this. And you can see all this in the financial analysis about what we hope to gain from this. But, I'll read off just a couple numbers. So we're looking at a economic impact of millions of dollars over the next 25 years. It's not that we don't expect to succeed, but when you talk about the but-for test, that's part of SLDC's analysis. If they present it to us many times, I believe, and we've seen their very lengthy process that they go through to analyze these things, and the but-for test is applied. So the last thing I'll say is on the transparency side of this, I think really the issue we ran into was that competitive nature, that the reason that we couldn't get the packet too far ahead of time was that the packet contains the name of the company. And when you're trying to lure a company here, there didn't need to be a pre-announcement of this company's landing here if we weren't far enough in those discussions yet. So now we're at a point where the company needs a commitment from us to make sure that we are going to help them build out this lab space and build their company here and grow their company here. And, I'm trying to make sure that we can do that on the schedule. I agree with you. I'm not happy with, the schedule I've been put under either. I've been sick this past week and I'm just trying to make it to break, like I think all of us are. But when it comes to, is this a win for the city? Absolutely, it's a win for the city. And while there may be frustrations with the process, I think that we owe it to our residents, our school children, to everybody to make sure that this city succeeds.
Alderwoman from the 12th, you're recognized.
Mr. Vice President and members of the board, I voted to not even suspend the rules to let this go down because you and I, as you know, Mr. Vice President, have voted no, probably on more TIFs than anybody else, me more than you, because I've been here longer than you. Even voting against the one that they tried to force down my throat to put the grocery store known as Snooks that would not be built if we didn't do a TIF. I don't even like the whole concept that we use development to take away from public schools. We talk about how valuable a public education is, but then we go and we make development based on public education and the money that should be going to public education. So we then start talking about competing interest. I was here when we gave Cortex the ability to do their own TIFs. We've given other, I think St. Louis University, other people, the ability to do their own TIFs. And one of the things that happens that I got to learn very early on in the 90s about the TIF Commission is the makeup and what happens and how can you get the TIF Commission to look out for the best interests of the people who are the most vulnerable. That's our school children. Those are public school children that a lot of times don't have any place else to go. They don't have parents who maybe know how to stand up for them because during our desegregation era, a lot of parents have fled. I come from a household in which my mom was part of a farming community. But I went to a school where there were other parents who were able to stand up for things, and they stood up for me. So I have the benefit of not only getting a good education in grade school and junior high and high school, but got to go to Washington University School of Law. So, and I am forever indebted to Washington University for my education. I am not, though, indebted to them enough that I don't feel like that they can do things differently. They have a big endowment. I can't believe they couldn't fund enough for this research company that's doing this wonderful stuff. I don't believe Washington couldn't fund that. I think that they could. And if you look at their endowments, and I challenged that when I was in law school because they kept saying they couldn't get Black students because my class had 20 and the other classes had 2 and 3. Is that we said, you don't use the money. They used their money, part of that endowment, and they gave scholarships. and 19 Black students came to school. You know what they did? They got rid of the program after that. I was so ashamed and embarrassed. I heard the alderman say that in his neighborhood, they do great things, but they don't do the things that they should in other neighborhoods. Like they don't have medical facilities outside of the central quarter. Now, I live very close to WashU. I can get on the bus and ride to Barnes, but they should be doing things in other neighborhoods that are not so right down the center of city of St. Louis. And what they shouldn't do is make us do a weighing decision about what's more important, getting this thing, which is so important, affects everybody. Alzheimer's affects every community, and it doesn't even have to be the older community, which people think, against our children getting an education, and especially the things that we're going through now, and the things that St. Louis Public Schools have gone through. People talk about how important education is, but for 10, 12 years, we were under the appointed board. And during that time, we were under the appointed board. There's all kinds of things that went on that nobody talks about, including the fact that there was never a representative from North St. Louis on the appointed board in the whole time that they were appointed. There was somebody from the county that was on that board, but not the St. Louis Public Schools. But what we also faced with the St. Louis Public Schools is that with when we had a lawsuit about not having proper schooling in North St. Louis and not being fair, instead of having a fair settlement, we sent kids out to other communities and we took the money with them. Everything seems to take the money away from St. Louis Public Schools. We then did charter schools. We take the money away. Then we criticize the public schools about why aren't you doing a better job? You're not doing this because they're in crisis. And so when we then start to look at doing TIFs and tax, we're not taking too much away. We're just taking a little bit away. Every little bit counts, but all your money has been taken away for years. For years and years and years, we have robbed the public schools. Now, I don't have any children, but the first thing I did when I got in office was to build a new public school in my community. Lexington Public Schools, one of my private public biggest things I've ever done in my life is to help get Lexington School built. And I want to do a shout out to Congressman Bill Clay because he made it happen. And I want to forever be thankful. But when we say that St. Louis Public Schools are important and that we want them to succeed, not for all those people, because if I had kids, I could send them to private schools. They can send their kids to private schools. It's for all those people that cannot. I was one of those kids at the time when I went to school. It is so important that we put the most we can into making sure that we have a good public school and that we don't cast the blame on the current school board members because they may have did or did not do something the way it's supposed to be. The fact of it is, bullshit walks and money talks, okay? So what we have done is that we have taken the monies from the public schools, and then every time we get a chance to say, no, we're not gonna do this, we then do it anyway. When I hear the alderman from the 9th talking, I can close my eyes and almost hear the former alderman from the 17th saying almost the same things of how important it is. I have heard year after year after year how important these TIFs are at the cost of public schools. I don't believe WashU couldn't fund this project. I know they can. They have lots of money. I don't believe Barnes can help. There's another way to fund this project that would not mean that we would take a penny from the public schools. I know some seniors don't like the senior tax freeze. I heard that talk about that. That is because we did not take away from money from the public schools. So the seniors expected more money, and I understand. But I also understand the sponsor didn't take that money from the public schools because we shouldn't. And if we don't do it for the seniors, we shouldn't be doing it from the big companies or important people like WashU. They're important to me. They are very well important to me. I appreciate them, but also important are our children. And we have to stop doing development at the cost of our children. There is a but-for test there for a reason. And during my time here, there are some big buildings on Skeeter now that we built and we multi-gate TIF, and I raised heck about it in tax abatement. And they used the thing of, oh, we need to have this done because they have grass that is not being cut. I mean, it was ridiculous stuff. And when I hear the alderman from the fourth saying he just doesn't believe that if they've started this, they're not going to do it, I don't either. They're going to find a way to do it. And if they don't do it, shame on them. That's not our fault. That's their fault. Because WashU has the capacity, and they have a strong board and a strong community, and they have the capacity to do this a different way. That should not involve a dime of our money. I don't care if they find and give the people some free space. We got all kind of spaces. Let's find a space that they can do this research in. Let's not do this. This is a mistake, and I am opposed to it. And I think we continue to make a mistake, a big mistake when we use development at the expense of the public schools. For that reason, I have been voting against TIFs most of my 30-something years, including one that was tried to be forced down my throat. And I know this particular part of the bill is not a TIF, but it has a companion, and it will be a TIF. And I'm hoping that we get to some point where we think that education always outranks a big, important community, like even WashU, that the education of our children is very important. And I appreciate you, WashU University. I just think that you're on the wrong path. And I stand in opposition to this TIF, as I have many more, and or anything that touches on the St. Louis Public Schools money. If we're going to criticize them, then the first thing we ought to do is make sure we stand up and we give them the support, that they get the money that they need, and that we are not taking not one red cent away from the St. Louis Public Schools, even if it is a little small property tax money, that we shouldn't do that. And I won't be talking on the next one either, because my vote will continue to be the same, and it is no. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Will the alderman from the 9th yield for question?
The alderman from the 9th yield to questioning from the alderman from the 14th.
Yes.
Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. I hope you're feeling better, Alderman. I could see it all in your face. Just to be clear, this is, like you said, it's a tax exemption on the construction materials and the personal property tax as well.
Yes, and the reason personal property tax is there is that is construction equipment. So like your car gets personal property tax, this is on a piece of construction equipment.
So since this is also an exemption on the personal property tax, would this have an effect on our public schools?
So very little, because a lot of these taxes are paid to entities outside our taxing districts. But you know, when we talk about the effect on our public schools, it's important to note that when these projects don't happen, the schools get no new revenue. When they do happen, the schools get additional revenue now. So this project will be contributing loads more taxes in 2026 when the project completes. The Goodwill building was built in 1919 and has been a nonprofit. So we have not been getting taxes from this building. But upon completion of this project, not only do we see an initial increase in taxes, but even with the TIF, you know, we'll see that initial increase, but then going forward, we'll see huge increases. That $16.6 million that I referenced between 2014 and now that Cortex has brought to the public schools, that's in addition outside of the TIF. So we talk about, you know, not robbing Peter to pay Paul, but when you don't allow the project to happen at all, that is truly robbing our public schools.
Okay. I was just trying to pull up the HUD's packet that we received in the committee, because it did talk about kind of the income that the public schools will get. If I'm not mistaken, I thought the public schools wouldn't see a large growth to about 2040, close to like 2050. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, so what you're seeing there is analysis that takes into account both the TIF and the sales tax exemption. But the reason you're not seeing really any change is because, again, these are not, the sales tax exemption doesn't really apply to taxes that would have been paid in the city anyway.
Okay. Yeah, because just looking at the projected revenue, like you say, once the project, I guess, completed in 2026, from what SLDC shows, you actually see like a drop in projection for public schools and don't see, I guess, a large increase to about 2046.
Yeah, I think if you look at the chart closely, you can see a short increase right at 2026, and then, yeah, the numbers kind of dip a little, but then sharp increase. So what you're seeing is actually like an increase, and then it kind of level set for a while, and then another increase. Again, 139 is about a sales tax exemption. This is stuff that's paid to large lumber yards, to places that sell construction equipment, none of which really exist within the city limits.
And if we don't pass 139, is it your belief that the company will then walk away, even though 140, they'll be tapping into the current TIF that already exists, and they'll just be pulling down the TIF note?
Yes, 139 is an important part of this deal. It allows them to build out the space.
Even though they already been building the space. So what's now all the, I guess, the problem now while they're running into we can't continue to build? Or my question is, are they building out the space like as of like today? Are they still building?
They had to start building the space to be eligible for historic tax credits. So that's why the construction has started, but it will stop if we don't pass this. The reason being is, I mean, anytime if you've owned a home or, spent money, you don't pay for a project all at once. You start money on it and then they finish the project and then you pay the rest of the balance. So there's lots of costs that kind of go along as you're doing a project. And this is still necessary to actually finish the project. Again, this is highly specialized lab space. So it's an expensive job to build it out to the specifications that would be needed to house a company like this.
Gotcha. Okay.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, Alderman from the 9th, you're recognized to close. Oh, sorry, Alderwoman from the 12th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. The Alderman from the 9th would yield.
The Alderman from the 9th yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 12th.
Yes.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Alderman, I hope you feel better. I heard that they're already working on the space because they had to start it because of his tax credits. Is that it?
Yeah, that's the information I have, is that in order to be eligible for historic state tax credits, they had to get construction underway.
I also heard that there was some dates on packages that went back to what, March or something like that? Is that the date, or May? Could you clarify that for me, please?
Yeah, there's been an ongoing effort to negotiate with this company in order to hopefully get it to land here. And I'm not sure specifically which document is being referred to, but it's very possible. I think when I first heard about these negotiations, it was a few months ago, making sure that we put together the right package to get this company to be able to set up here. Again, I'm going to emphasize that this lab space does not exist in St. Louis currently. And so what the difficulty is looking at other cities that do have this type of lab space available. And this homegrown company here in St. Louis was looking and saying, can we stay here? Can we afford to do that? And this package has been put together to make that a possibility.
I get that. So, but listening to what was said on the floor about the HUD's committee not getting material until very late, and the packaging that they got had a date on it, and I thought I heard the explanation was that, well, things had to be kept secretive. Was that the reason why it was kept so close to the vest? Is that what you understood? Is that what you're saying?
One of the reasons that I have been told that the company name could not be revealed until we got farther along in negotiation. So that's been the effort, is to try to balance both transparency, but also the privacy that this company needed in order to make this decision. We have gotten to a point where now the name is known and we can talk about it. It's very exciting. But yes, that is one of the reasons that there was some delay on that end.
And when you say we, who is we? Did you know the name of the company?
I have a non-voting seat on the Cortex board so that I can stay informed about what the district is involved in. And so there was discussion, yes, about the company, but again, it's been pretty close to the vest in attempts to try to get this company to land here. And I don't think there's anything nefarious about it. It's just simply that people are trying to make sure that all parties are in agreement before we move on to the next stage.
So I didn't say nefarious. What I really take umbrage at is that members of the Board of Aldermen are just like members of Congress or state people at the state level, in that if it is something that's confidential, we know how to keep it confidential, and we take oaths to do our job. And so I think that it maybe not the full Board of Aldermen, if it was going to go before a committee, that could have been shared and has been in past, because I've been here for a long time, and it hasn't been disclosed. People who sit in Congress, they get confidential information about our defense. They don't go blabbing it to everybody. And I don't believe there's anybody on this board, if it was told that it was confidential, that they would have gone blabbing it around. I think that that was a mistake not to at least share it with the committee that it was going to be before, and so that they could be working on looking at it and reading the package in a more comfortable position of having time to go over it. So I think that is a mistake. I guess, don't understand. So WashU is, Barnes is a research hospital, is that correct?
Yes, that is something they do, yeah.
Okay, so I don't understand why a research hospital such as Barnes would, and I always combine the two, Barnes, Washington University, would not be able to find space and help build it out, rather than coming and asking for, and you're saying, oh, it's going to just be a small amount of the money that's going to be taken away from the St. Louis public schools. Why would they want a penny of the money that's going to be taken away from the public schools? I don't understand that. That's a lot of taxes that WashU as and especially Barnes, they don't pay all the taxes that they should. And part of that is because they're a hospital. And when you go on that complex that they have now, anybody that have it, they should go, because when from Kings Highway over to not quite, is it Boyle? Not quite Boyle. Maybe Boyle. And from Forest Parkway Express over to maybe Manchester and that part. If you go in there, you're like in your own little city. So I am just very uncomfortable with the fact that we would start something, because part of the whole thing of the TIF is but for test. If you've already started it, you can't say it wouldn't happen. You're going to say, I can now say I'm not going to finish it, but you can't argue that it wouldn't happen because it already has happened. It already started. So that just makes me very uncomfortable to say we could start something and then stop it in the middle of it and say we're not going to do it if you don't give us this. And I know this bill right here is not the TIF, but the companion bill is. If you don't give us this TIF, then we're not going to get this done. I think that is not true. I think they will get it done. I think, in fact, if they're not, shame on them, because they should get it done. It should be done. It should be done in a way that we don't take any money from the public schools. And since you sit on that board, do you sit on that board because it's in your ward? Is that what happens?
That's correct. I have a seat on the board as the 9th Ward alderperson.
Right. Okay, so was there any talk about how this could be done without taking money from the St. Louis public schools? Not any, and I don't want to hear small amount, any.
Yeah, there's been a lot of exploration about how to finance this. I think that when it comes down to it, the incentives being requested are something that are being put together as a larger incentive package. As we mentioned, state historic tax credits being there's a number of things you pull together to create financing for a project, and sometimes it doesn't happen all at once either. So that is what's happening, is they've looked at the packages and tried to figure this out. And again, I want to note that 139 is just a sales tax exemption.
So I'm sitting, and I've been dealing with Cortex probably much longer than you. Okay, so sitting on that board, have they ever given you any dollar figures about just how much money, small amounts of money? Because you told me about how much they paid, how much money though has been taken away from the St. Louis Public Schools or other taxing entities, because it's not just the St. Louis Public Schools, it's also the junior college and other entities. Have you ever gotten any reports about how their TIFs have worked and what it has cost these taxing entities?
Yes. So I'm looking directly at Cortex's economic benefit since the TIF activation. Those are the numbers that I cited earlier. So I could go down the list here, but again, between 2014 and 2022, net new revenues, that's over the amount of the TIF, right? You've seen a $16.6 million increase.
I'm sorry, excuse me. I didn't ask how much their revenue. I said, have you got any reports about what it has cost the taxing districts?
Well, if the project had not happened, then the taxing district would have gotten $0.
So I've heard that for probably longer than you are probably almost alive. Oh, if it wouldn't happen, then we wouldn't be getting this money. And you know what they've always found a way to do, to come back and find another way half of the time of why we still didn't get that money, because they had something else that took its place. We've had all kind of new things that started, and then they came back until a reason why we need to give more. And we've always been told over the years, and so I am sitting here telling you, 33 years later, oh, we're going to get away from this. We're not going to do this. We're never going to get away from it, because it is to the benefit for people to say we have to have this. And once they say we have to have it, and people such as yourself, you're doing your job as the alderman of the 9th Ward, and you sit on their board, is to advocate for them. But we haven't really truly explored what happens when we don't do stuff. I don't see any examples I haven't seen where we didn't do stuff and it didn't get done. And I always use something not nearly as big, but just the snooks. Oh, it won't get done. For 3.5 years, I had my behind kicked. It wouldn't get done. It got done the minute that they knew that they could not give it. So I would like to see it tested of what would happen on why would a research hospital like Barnes Jewish, with that massive complex they have there, start a project, start and apply for the tax credits, and then not do it if we said, no, we're going to pick the children this time over the large complex. So do you have any information that you could provide me of something that didn't get done, that was turned down at the TIF and then it didn't get done?
Yeah, I mean, not on me at the time, but it's really hard to point to a building that didn't get built because it's not there to point to. But I can say that, yes, there's lots of projects that die every year because they cannot make the.
They couldn't get TIFs? Is that what you're saying? Or they couldn't get some other kind of incentive?
They couldn't make the numbers work for any number of reasons. St. Louis is a weak market. St. Louis doesn't have the space available. The construction costs have gone up. Labor costs go up. There's so many things that go into development. Yeah, it's not so simple as to say, well, we didn't provide this, it should get built anyway. Developers have their own numbers they look at. They provide those numbers to SLDC. SLDC does the analysis. They apply a but-for test. And we get to where we are today with a report about the economic benefit this would bring. What I can say with confidence is that we will not be getting these tax increases if this company is not landed here in St. Louis.
And what I can say with confidence is you must live in a different city than I've lived in and been served on the board all this time, because it's hardly any of them that don't get what they asked for. Snooks didn't. We actually went to the TIF Commission and lobbied them, and I can provide you with the printout. I can provide you with the report that was made, the TIF commission, after we lobbied them, turned down the TIF for Snooks when we presented the evidence, because they were going to give it, and I went before the TIF along with some other people, and one of the TIF commissioners luckily lived in our community, and they turned it down, and it still got built. I can't think of any of them that really came before the Board of Aldermen and needed incentives that they didn't get it. They get it in one way or other. They turn around, they come back another way. We did turn down a soccer stadium when they came before us, and then they went back out and we had a vote, and they had to do it a whole different way because we actually did say no to them. Other things we said no to, the people are in our buildings right now, and they're not even paying any rent. So I've just not seen that people don't get to do their development. They get to do it no matter what we say, just about. And I'm just looking for that new progressive era where we say we're not going to continue to just automatically give TIFs that affect the St. Louis Public Schools and then criticize the St. Louis Public Schools. And then we use words like, well, it won't matter that much, or it's just going to be a small amount. If you're taking money out of my pocket, be it $5 or $500, if it's my $5, I want it kept in my pocket. So I would love for you to provide me some examples of where we turn down TIFs, because the good thing is that we have records going all the way back to when I came in 1991, or even before that, that will show that we don't do that. We don't turn these things down. And that but-for test that we talk about, even if it's not met, even if it doesn't fulfill the requirements, they do it anyway. And then we talk about, look what we got these monies, but what would happen if we did development and we did not? We had some other way we said, nope, we're not going to do development at the expense of the public schools. And at any time, I would like for you to share with me anything you have about where somebody didn't get a TIF and they didn't build it. I think you'll be hard pressed to do it. And again, I would suggest that in the future, that if you have knowledge that's going to come before a committee for the Board of Aldermen, that you share it with them with the agreement that it has to be kept confidential. I think that we have the ability to do that just like anybody on the state level or the federal level. And we have done that before. I think that that's a tool that is used to say, hurry up, we got to get this done. And if we don't get it done, we're going to be in trouble. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Then Alderman from the 9th, you're recognized to close.
Thank you. I'll just say again that I appreciate my colleagues' consideration of this. I am also regretful of the timeline, but I don't think that means we should endanger the project. I think that when you look at this is an exciting opportunity for St. Louis. This is an opportunity to say, hey, the talent that we grow here is the talent that we want to keep here. That we want to make St. Louis a destination for people who are innovative, who are bringing new technologies that will help millions of people. Anyone who's been affected by Alzheimer's can tell you what an awful, awful impact it has on not just the person experiencing it, but especially the family. The ability to track the efficacy of drugs to treat this horrible disease, it's one of those things that makes me really just feel like we're living in the future. We're solving problems that have long plagued us. And the opportunity to put that right here in St. Louis is just an incredible, incredible opportunity. So I think when it comes down to it, we see progress when we approve these types of things. We see new tax revenue for the city. We see new tax revenue for the schools. And, for the record, I am a huge supporter of our public schools. I think we need to have honest conversations about what the true threat to them is. Because when you talk to our public school board about tax incentives, they're understanding. They understand that it means new money now and new money later. that this is a win-win for the city and the schools. At their most recent legislative update, which I went to because, again, I'm a supporter of the public schools, they said that their financial situation was excellent, that they are doing very well. The main problem they continue to have is enrollment. And so I would welcome the conversations about what we can do to support our public schools, including things like not supporting the expansion of charters, not expanding for-profit entities that don't educate every child in our city. I am a steadfast supporter of the right to every child to have a quality public education. And I know that by doing projects like this, we not only provide that, we provide future revenue for the school district, but we also provide future opportunity for everybody in our city. So again, I thank you for your time and your questions, and I would ask for your support today in passing this sales tax exemption so that this lab space can be built out and house this talent that we grew in St. Louis.
It's been moved by the alderman from the 9th, seconded by the alderwoman the 1st, that we perfect Board Bill 139. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Orion. Alderman Balmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
No.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge.
Pass.
President Green.
Pass.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderwoman Keys. Thank you. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Pass.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderwoman Boyd.
Pass.
Alderman Aldridge.
No.
President Green.
Pass.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderwoman Boyd. President Green.
No.
5 aye votes and 7 no votes.
By your vote, you failed to sustain the motion on the perfection of Board Bill 139. The vote has already been called, unfortunately.
Board Bill 140, sponsored by Alderman Browning, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the issuance and delivery of one or more series of tax increment revenue notes, including RPA 4 tax increment revenue notes in an aggregated principal amount not to exceed $4 million plus cost of issuance, approving a third amendment to an amended and restated redevelopment agreement, approving the 9th supplemental trust indenture in connection with the issuance of a RPA 4 notes, authorizing and directing the taking of other actions and approval and execution of other documents as necessary or desirable to carry out and comply with the intent hereof, authorizing certain actions by certain officials of the city, containing a severability clause.
Alderman from the 9th, you're recognized on the perfection of Board Bill 140.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to move 140 to the informal calendar.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that.
So noted. That's the extent of Board Bills for Perfection.
Report of engrossment.
Board Bill 104, floor sub 125, 133, and 134 as amended.
Third reading and final passage of board bills consent.
Board Bill 104, floor sub 125, 133, and 134 as amended.
Alderwoman from the 10th. Is she here? Alderman from the 14th, you are recognized in the motion to adopt the third reading and final passage of board bills on the consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we perfect adopt third reading and final passage on the consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt the third reading and final passage of board bills on the consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Aye. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Aye. Alderman Valmer. Aye. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Aye. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Alderwoman, I didn't see your, thank you. Alderman Aldridge.
Aye.
President Green.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer. Alderwoman Keys. 14 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderman from the 14th to third read and finally pass the aforementioned bills. Third reading and final passage of board bills.
Board, we have none.
We can dispense with line item 18B, report if finally passed and signed by the President.
104 floor sub 125, 133, and 134 as amended.
All other business being suspended, the President shall in open session affix her signature here to the end that these may become law. First reading of resolutions and reference to committee.
Resolution 215 sponsored by Alderman Aldridge, support of high dosage tutoring.
Alderman from the 14th, you are recognized on the first reading of resolution 215.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move to adopt.
Request unanimous consent.
Request unanimous consent on resolution number
215.
215.
Hearing no objection to unanimous consent, you can now move for adoption.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to adopt resolution number 215.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt resolution 215. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. This is a similar resolution that I had brought up earlier this year around literacy, making sure that we as the Board of Aldermen continue to just echo how important it is to make sure that we support our kids in public education as far as their literacy, but also making sure that one big issue, as I've been talking to some education advocate groups, is making sure that our young kids have more support when it comes to tutoring. And I had told them that the board had already made strides to make sure that even though a resolution is, not a binding thing, but it does show that this Board of Aldermen does care about public education. So this is just calling on other entities and make sure that we continue to support tutoring for our public school kids.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 4th. Your microphone needs to be turned.
Will the alderman yield?
Yes, sir.
The alderman from the 14th yield to questioning from the alderman from the 4th.
Yes.
Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you. I'm just curious, what is high dosage tutoring?
So it really should just say tutoring. It was the advocacy group that I talked to said high dosing tutoring is just a very aggressive level of tutoring, but it is still the same amount of tutoring. It is like going through a AP track fast class, but it was one of the things that they were really advocate of saying high dosing.
Okay, so it's not like a medical thing.
No.
I was just like, what are we doing? Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
No, appreciate you asking, Alderman.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 14th, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and I appreciate the Alderman for his line of questioning. With that, I would ask that we renew my motion.
It's been moved by the alderman from the 14th, seconded by the alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt resolution 15. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
That's the extent of first reading of resolutions.
Second reading resolutions, committee reports and adoption.
Report from the Public Safety Committee, the mayoral appointment to the Civilian Oversight Board of Kristen Griffin.
Alderwoman from the Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we adopt the appointment of Kristen Griffin to the Civilian Oversight Board.
It's been moved by the alderman from the 4th, seconded by the alderwoman from the 10th, that we approve the mayor's appointment to the Civilian Oversight Board. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Report from the HUD's Committee, mayoral appointment to the Commissioners of the Housing Authority, Regina Fowler, Saladin Martinez, Constantino Ochoa, and Dara Eskridge.
Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on Mayor Jones' appointments to the Commissioners on the Housing Authority.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we approve Mayor Jones' appointments to the Commission of Housing Authority.
It's been moved by the alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the alderwoman from the 7th, that we approve Mayor Jones' appointments to the Commissioners of the Housing Authority. Is there any discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I am not a fan of the reappointments. I think Mr. Martinez has been on the board for 20-some odd years, or at least since maybe Clarence Harmon was the mayor, or after he was, maybe right after that when Francis Slay became the mayor in 2001 or so. I am troubled by these appointments, not only because they're just a rehash and nobody else gets to do them, but because the commissioners at the housing authorities don't follow their own rules. I have two senior buildings in my community that the housing authority had said they were going to.
Excuse me, point of order. I cannot hear for all the background noise.
So noted. Alderwoman, you may proceed.
So I have two buildings in my ward that were senior buildings. In the from the Housing Authority itself, when Cheryl Lovell was the chair there, and I'm sorry, was the director there, Mr. Martinez was the chair, as he's been for years, they were going to tear down all the high rises and keep low rises. In North St. Louis, they did exactly the opposite. One is at Warwick and Kings Highway. They tore down the low-rise public housing, and they left the high-rise and sent it to and sold it to a private developer who, it's a big problem in our community. There was a senior building, and still is, in the 5400 block of Euclid. And they tore down again the low rises and left the high rises. And then they converted the senior building into anybody can live there. It is a big mess. I've called Mr. Martinez on more than one occasion to say, hey, you guys are not following what you said you were going to do. Why aren't you doing it? Why is it something different in North St. Louis? We've never been able to get an answer. Was going to look into it, never have. So my vote is a protest vote for not having a policy that is consistent across the city of St. Louis. Seniors are especially people who need their peace and quiet as they get older. And it troubles me that we took a building that was a senior building, and with no notice at all to the people that had already agreed to live in that building, we transferred it into a building that has been a hot mess, would be the way to say it. And we can't do anything to stop it because we don't seem to have the will. That is because the people who sit on the Housing Authority don't live in the communities, and they don't appear to care. And for that reason, I'm not going to even ask for a separation. I just will want to be able to make a collective no, and to say you ought to be ashamed of yourself of the two pieces of properties. Because right now we are having so many problems with senior buildings. I have 6 senior buildings in my ward, and there are so many problems, and not including the one that closed down this time last year, that you ought to be doing a better job of keeping your word about what you're going to do in the community, and also not telling seniors they can live in a building and then transferring it to a building that everybody could live in. For that reason, I'll be doing a collective no. I don't need a separation. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized to close.
I renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we approve Mayor Jones' appointments
Roll call.
to the St. Louis Housing Authority. There has been a request for roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Aye. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Balmer. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye.
Sanye.
Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd.
I'm sorry, no.
Thank you. Alderwoman Boyd. I'm sorry, Alderwoman, I didn't hear you. She said.
Aye.
Thank you. Alderman Aldridge.
Aye.
President Green.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Keys. 13 aye votes and 1 no vote.
By your vote, you've sustained the motion from the Alderwoman from the 10th to approve Mayor Jones' appointments to the Commissioners of the Housing Authority.
Resolution 203, sponsored by Alderman Browning, RPA 4 redevelopment project.
Alderman from the 9th, you're recognized on the second reading of Resolution 203.
Thank you. This resolution, as I mentioned, well, I guess first of all, I would have to move to pass and adopt Resolution 203.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 9th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 1st, that we adopt resolution number 203. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you. So this resolution is the detailed project plan for the C2N project. The project plan was required because, as I mentioned, when this TIF was activated 2 years ago, the RPA 4 TIF was activated. It was expiring at the time. It was about to expire, and so they activated it with a promise and a goodwill gesture to say, when we come back, we will provide more project details. So you can find all those details in that resolution. It's quite thorough about the benefit that this project would bring to our city. I think right now the project is in jeopardy given how the last vote went, but I'm still going to go ahead and ask for a vote on this resolution today because I want their broker, who might be at the airport headed to Chicago right now, to hear that we are actually interested in keeping this company here and that we're going to do what it takes to try to keep this company here. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. If the Alderman from the 9th would yield.
The Alderman from the 9th yields to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 12th.
Yes.
Alderwoman,
So
you may proceed.
Oh, thank you. Alderman from the 9th, you envision that the project is in trouble because of the way board bill, whichever 130, whatever it was, that the vote went, and that you put the other companion board bill on the informal calendar, but you are passing the resolution as an attempt to show them that we have good faith and wanting to keep the redevelopment project going. Is that what you said?
Yes, I hope that maybe we can have a motion to reconsider from somebody who voted no on 139 so that they can at least resume with the construction. But obviously 140 won't be able to be discussed again today. I did move that to the informal because it did not appear that we had the votes. So I will continue to work on this because I believe this is a really good thing for St. Louis, a really good thing for our schools. It's not a matter of giving up. So I'm going to do what it takes to continue to move this forward. And again, this resolution is the project details that were asked for by this board. So I appreciate the good faith effort that's been taken to provide as many details as possible, and we're going to proceed with this.
And so my question is, what do you expect from this resolution? If the other two doesn't get passed, then this resolution has no full force and effect at all. It's just a plan. Is that correct?
Well, no resolution that we pass has any kind of effect. That's what a resolution
Oh, that's
is.
not true. I beg your pardon. That is not true. We do have resolutions that do have an effect.
There are some. This one is just the details of the project.
Okay.
It's just acknowledging that we've received.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, so you, again, I want to ask you again. So you're telling me that because we didn't pass one of the board bills, that the construction work stops or has stopped because of that today?
Yes, that is correct. The space is going to be built out for this company. There's no reason to build out this space if the company will not be filling it.
So were they, as to your knowledge, were they working today?
No, I did not drive that way to work, so I didn't pass it, but
okay.
I assume maybe, but it's also too cold to pour concrete, so maybe not.
Okay, so they're you're telling me they're just going to leave the project as is and just walk away if we don't get this done. Is that it?
They might find some other uses for the building eventually, but I believe that the build out of this space to house this company will not happen.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to be asking for a roll call because I'm not voting for the resolution either.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, Alderman from the 9th, you are recognized to close.
I'd ask my colleagues' favorable consideration on this. Again, the resolution is just acknowledging that we have the project details that were requested at the time that this TIF was activated 2 years ago. Alderwoman Boyd did have her hand up.
Okay.
Apologies, I cannot see her on the screen at the moment. Alderwoman from the 13th.
I'm here. My computer is kind of kicky today because I guess the weather. Could I add, could the Alderman Brownie take a question, please?
Would the
In
Alderman from the 9th yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 13th?
Yes.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Alderman Brownie. I just want to ask, did you talk to anybody with the SLPS board in regards to this bill?
I haven't had those conversations. I can't speak to whether Cortex or the SLDC has had those conversations. The schools do sit on the TIF commission, so they are aware of this project, but I personally haven't had that conversation.
Okay, and so I'm in agreement with Alderwoman Tyus because as we all know, it is an attack on St. Louis Public Schools, and they keep saying what's not going on, but they have been taking dollars from them, and now they're stepping up in regards to these tax credits and tips. And so I just ask respectively that anybody that has something that impacts them, that they do reach out to St. Louis Public School Board, you know, the chair, the vice chair, any members, so they can make sure there's clarity and they can tell their point of view in regards to this. So that's what I was just asking, if you had done that. Thank you so much, sir.
Absolutely. And I think this one is a bit of a special circumstance in terms of the timeline. Also, it being activated 2 years ago, I'm sure the schools were involved in that discussion 2 years ago. Again, what we're doing today, or what we're attempting to do, is both the sales tax exemption, which, as we've discussed, has very little impact on taxing districts, and then the issuing of the actual TIF note, not the activation, which already happened, but the issuing of the note. So I am sensitive to that. For any tax abatements that I am sponsoring, I always do reach out and make sure we talk to the schools. For this one in particular, the existing TIF, and even when this passed through the TIF commission, I know they were part of that conversation. But I absolutely hear you, Alderwoman Boyd, and in agreement that we should always be talking to our partners at SLPS.
Thank you, sir.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 9th, you are recognized to close.
Thank you. Again, I just renew my request to pass the resolution, be in receipt of these project details, and encourage people to read through the resolution to see the benefit that this project brings to St. Louis. And with that, I close and ask for your vote.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 9th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 1st, that we adopt Resolution 03. There's been a request for a roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Aye. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone.
Aye. Or no.
Alderman Narayan.
Nope.
Alderman Balmer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velazquez. I'm sorry, that was Velazquez. That Alderwoman Spencer. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Spencer. Aye. Alderman Browning. Aye. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
No.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Keys. Alderman Aldridge. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. I'm sorry, you said pass? Alderwoman Keys. Alderman Aldridge. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Keys. 8 aye votes and 5 no votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion to adopt resolution number 203.
And that's the extent of second reading of resolutions, committee reports, and adoption. Jeez. I know we do. Is your mic on?
Having voted on the prevailing side, I would like to make a motion to reconsider Board Bill 1.
So it's been moved by the president that we reconsider the vote on. Your mic. Is it not on? Okay. It's been moved by President Green to reconsider the vote on Board Bill 139.
Right now.
Alderwoman from the 12th, Alderwoman from the 12th, Alderwoman from the 12th, thank you. It's been moved by President Green, seconded by Alderwoman from the 8th, that we reconsider Board Bill 139. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes. Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderwoman, thank you. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone.
No.
Alderman Narayan. No. Alderman Balmer. Aye. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. No. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Aye. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Aye. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
No.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge. No. President Green.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Keys. 8 aye votes and 5 no votes.
By your vote, you have sustained the motion from President Green to reconsider Board Bill 139.
Alderman from the 9th, you are recognized on Board Bill 139.
Thank you. So here we go again. I would ask that my colleagues separate their frustration with the process, which I am also frustrated by, and look at what St. Louis has to gain here, and also look at what St. Louis has to lose here. I would like St. Louis to be a place where people feel like they can grow. I'd like for St. Louis to be a place where people feel like they can start a company and keep it here, employing local St. Louisans rather than people in Chicago. Chicago's a big city. It doesn't need this kind of thing. St. Louis is a city that is on a precipice. Whether we reverse our population decline and turn this into a city that gives everybody a chance depends on our ability to bring jobs and residents here. I say jobs because it's one thing to live here, but you do need to be able to earn a living. And I truly believe that these are the types of jobs that really benefit St. Louis because, as I've mentioned, a lab is a space that has jobs at every level. It's a space that doesn't close down, even in a pandemic. Even when the pandemic was at its height, the lab workers in our institutions found ways to schedule their shifts so that they would not overlap, but that they could continue doing this important work to move their scientific field forward. I was an employee at Washington University in the Department of Ophthalmology when, for the 9 years before I became an alderperson. I was a senior grant specialist there, which meant I worked with doctors to get money for research so that they could do these groundbreaking discoveries. And what I'd often see is, some of the best science that this country has to offer, applying for this money and then, hopefully getting it. And when I'd read through those applications, I did catch one time that was it caught my eye because I know people, like I'm sure you all do, with Alzheimer's. It was the ability to diagnose Alzheimer's early through someone's eyes. You could actually look at their eyes and see whether or not they were starting to exhibit early stages of Alzheimer's. And the reason that's important is because before you even saw cognitive decline, before you even saw changes in behavior, you could identify the disease and start to treat it. This test that C2N creates is very much alongside that same line of thinking, that we can diagnose early, we can measure the efficacy of these drugs, and we can make sure that they're helping the people it needs to help. That's not just going to help people in St. Louis, it's going to help people worldwide. So again, I appreciate my colleagues taking the time on this today, and would again request your consideration of this important sales tax exemption in order to build out this lab space so that work can be done.
Alderman, you need to make a motion to effect.
I move that we perfect Board Bill 139.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 9th, seconded by the Alderman from the 5th, that we perfect Board Bill 139. Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, thank you. First of all, I'd like to say to the Alderman from the 9th, do not dismiss the concerns as something of the process. The concerns for some of us are the TIFs itself, the way that Washington gets all kind of incentives, the attack on the public schools. So to be so dismissive as to the other concerns is unfair and untrue. Even before, since you were a little kid, we have expressed these concerns. Before you could have even voted, we were expressing these concerns. And it pains me when I hear people say, "Oh, we're trying to grow the city. We want the city to grow." We haven't tried to grow the city in certain parts in years and years and years. And all the time since you've been down here, I haven't heard you really notice that you really were concerned about certain parts of the city. You're concerned about getting what you want in your parts of the city, so that when the Black aldermen show up and say, and I'm talking about the three that represent 90% of the city, and say this is not good for us, you push that agenda through anyway, as though you have a better idea of what's good for the city than the people who've been elected for years and years and years. So, and when you hear that a majority of Black middle-class people are leaving the city, then the agenda that you're pushing is not for us. It is for somebody else. So when you want to grow the city, the question would be, who do you want to grow the city for? It doesn't seem to be for the people that's been here, that's paid the taxes, that didn't get any tax abatement, that didn't get any tips. It's for a whole group. We're looking at the future of bringing other people and giving them benefits at the expense of people who don't get that kind of thing. So don't be so dismissive about the agenda, because the agenda is not to stop Wash U from growing, because they're already a huge juggernaut. The agenda is that we give public schools a chance to have a fair chance at educating our children, which we haven't done, and that's why many Liddells filed the lawsuit, and it didn't work with sending our children out to the St. Louis County because we sent our money with there. It doesn't work with charter because we send our money to the charter schools, and then we give money away with development. So we end up with very little funds to be fair to the community children who stay in the St. Louis public schools. So the concern is real, and it's ongoing, and it can be documented. So if you're trying to grow the city, you might try looking at that you don't have all the answers for other people. And that's why we have votes in different parts of the city, and we have ward votes, because then the people can tell you who they believe can speak for them about what they think is right. I represent a lot of St. Louis public school teachers over the years, and they do not like TIF. They don't like tax abatement. They don't like all of these charter schools. They don't like sending the kids out to the community where they got no better education. And the only thing they were able to do was to keep our scholars and our athletes. They didn't keep the rest of the children. None of that was for the best interest of the school, and it was not for growing all parts of the city. The only way you can take that stance is that you would have to say those parts of the cities, they don't want to grow, and that's just not true. We do want to grow, and we want a fair chance that our children get an education. So I've watched this power move today, and I just had told somebody that it was going to happen. It'll be interesting now how the Rams money votes goes down, because I did watch the power move and I predicted it. But for me, it was not a game, it was serious. So when I heard you say I'm looking for being able to do a motion for a reconsideration, I'll be looking at the vote after this, because we're playing with our children's education. It is not right. It is wrong. We're not trying to grow this city. Every year since I've been here, we've been losing population. The one time when we were gaining population in North St. Louis, they tore that ward up because they didn't want North St. Louis to gain population or to be stable. And that's the policies that are coming out this board now is to all it will do will destabilize North St. Louis more and the residents that live there. And I'm sorry that we have to make a decision between Wash U and or Barnes Hospital or the Cortex and our children. That should not be the decision. And I want, if people get a chance, please look up tax increment financing. Find out where it came from, who brought tax increment financing, what president was in office, why they brought it, and how they bought it. It is not for the benefit of public schools. And for that reason, I will continue to vote against this bill and any others, and I would ask for a roll call vote.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 9th, you are recognized to close.
Well, thank you. And I'll just start by saying I certainly don't intend to sound dismissive. I think that we have a city full of people who, are all going to have a different beliefs and understandings. We do our best job as representatives to not just represent our constituents, but also to look out for the best interests of the city. If I truly believed this would hurt public school kids, then I would not be in support. If I truly believed that this would be something that only benefited my ward, then I would not be in support. When I look at this city, again, I see a city on a precipice. I see us on the verge of turning this population decline around. I see us able to attract top companies, which is why we're here having this conversation today. It's actually quite exciting that they're even considering staying in St. Louis, that they're giving this an opportunity to build out this space so that we can house their labs and actually help them grow here. So I think that St. Louis is a great place, and I think what is good for our city, no matter where it happens. And I am always happy to be supportive of development in the 12th Ward and the 3rd Ward, in any part of this city. I would love to be of help how I can to make sure that we move our city forward and we provide enough housing for people. We provide jobs for people, good quality jobs too, not, McDonald's. Not that McDonald's is a bad job at first, but, I think that people really want to make sure that this city is diverse and successful for those people that live here. So, again, I appreciate people having this discussion today. I'm sorry that we've had to go back and forth on this because I do think we have a shared goal. And at the end of the day, it is that goal to improve St. Louis for everybody that I think we should have.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 9th, seconded by the Alderman from the 5th, that we perfect Board Bill 139. There's been a request for roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Aye. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. No. Alderman Balmer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velazquez.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye.
No.
Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
No.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge.
No.
President Green.
No.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Keys. 7 aye votes and 6 no votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderman from the 9th to perfect Board Bill 136, or 139, sorry. Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you. I would request that we move Board Bill 140 off of the informal calendar and onto the regular perfection calendar.
Madam Clerk, if you could please move Board Bill 140 from the informal calendar to the end of the regular perfection calendar.
So noted.
We can now take up Board Bill 140.
Board Bill 140, sponsored by Alderman Browning. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Admin and Apportionment authorizing and directing the issuance and delivery of one or more series of tax increment revenue notes, including RPA 4 tax increment revenue notes, in an aggregated principal amount not to exceed $4 million, plus cost of issuance, approving a third amendment to amended and restated redevelopment agreement, approving the 9th supplemental trust indenture in connection with the issuance of RPA 4 notes, authorizing and directing the taking of other actions and approval and execution of other documents as necessary or desirable to carry out and comply with the intent hereof, authorizing certain actions by certain officials of the city containing the severability clause.
Alderman from the 9th, you're recognized on the perfection of Board Bill 140.
Thank you. I move that we perfect Board Bill 140.
Second.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 9th, seconded by the Alderman from the 5th, that we perfect Board Bill 140. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you. So we've done a lot of discussion about this project today. What Board Bill 140 is the issuance of a TIF note. That is a terminology being used because the TIF is already active for this piece of property. It was voted on 2 years ago by our larger Board of 28 in order to keep it from expiring so that a future project could happen. Well, today that future project is here. We are considering it. And we've had a lot of discussion about the importance of that project. I'll repeat the thing I said earlier today, which is that Cortex's TIF redevelopment agreement is essentially a contract in which the city obligated Cortex to develop this 200-acre site on the city's behalf. We set goals It was part of a larger effort, and part of those goals was to bring in companies like C2N. And so what we're doing today is we're issuing that TIF note so that this can proceed. What happens under a TIF is that taxes are frozen at a certain amount, and the extra increase on that property, that increase in value, goes back into project costs. So it goes into sewer, it goes into street infrastructure, it goes into upgrading these buildings. I'll point again to the Goodwill building being formerly a nonprofit that was not on the city tax rolls. This is a chance to turn it into high-end lab space. So we're working very hard to continue to deliver on that promise that is Cortex and how that benefits the city overall. I've read you the numbers about how that is beneficial to the city. And those are cold, hard numbers. Those are not, calculations or analyses. Those are actual benefits that this has brought to the public schools and to our city. So landing this company here, again, is going to be just such a incredible thing for the city. And I believe that if we are able to pass this today, not only are we creating the headline for the day, but we'll be creating headlines in the future that will really make our city something that people will look to when they think of their loved one who was helped by this technology. They'll want to live here because there are opportunities available for them. And we'll have shown that we are a city who wants you to grow here. So with that, again, I renew my motion and ask for your support. Happy to answer any questions that you might have about this, but I believe this is a wonderful thing for our city and hope that we don't pass up on this opportunity.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 12th.
Madam President, members of the board, thank you. If the alderman from the 9th would yield.
The alderman from the 9th yield to questioning from the alderwoman from the 12th.
Yes.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Alderman, you used the term the city obligated the Cortex to do this development. Is that what you said?
Yes, the agreement in creating this TIF, this area is to make sure that the city is getting this benefit of landing new companies, new technologies, and training up the next generation of our workforce.
So by obligated, you didn't mean that we drug Cortex kicking and screaming and said, you will do this. You said that we had an agreement with them, but that it was Cortex itself that wanted to do that. Are you aware of that? It wasn't the city saying, oh, you have to do this. That wasn't what you meant, right?
That's not what I meant. What I mean is that the city in its agreement with Cortex set goals that we want to see come out of this. It's a collaboration. I do hear the concern about Washington University and the lack of taxes that they pay. That is true for any of our anchor institutions like SLU as well. But when I look at this, I think about what we're able to achieve when we work together with these institutions that have chosen to call our city home. And when we work together with them, we can create things like Cortex that deliver beneficial results for the whole city. If you look at their hiring, if you look at the workforce training numbers that
Alderman,
they put out.
We don't have to go through all of that. I appreciate it. You answered my question. You didn't mean that. That's what, okay. It's because you're not going to change my mind and I'm not going to change yours. But I just wanted to make it clear that the city didn't drag the Cortex stomping and banging their heels and saying, we don't want to do this. The Cortex sought this. They wanted this to happen. And it was something that they got as an agreement, and all around it, they've built up all around that area using TIF and tax abatement and things like that. And the very neighborhoods that should have been getting use from it did not get it. No benefit has come to a lot of the neighborhoods that should have been doing this, but the Cortex was not done. That was not done to the Cortex against their will. That's what I wanted to make sure. When I hear people saying that the city made them, you didn't say use the words made, but you said that they had an agreement and that they had to, or and when in fact it was something that they sought out. The alderman from the 17th brought it at that time. Did more TIFs than everybody else in the city. As I said before, the former alderman of the 25th, and I probably voted no against most of that stuff more than anybody else, because although you extol the virtues, it just, if you come around in the rest of the city, it has not. WashU then even gave another $10 million. That's why you can drive down Manchester and that neighborhoods and put another $10 million toward development right around the cortex and things. But there's nothing, and this is nothing new, because I've said it to WashU. They haven't done anything in North St. Louis. They don't have a medical facility, and it's things that they don't have that they should have. And if this is a whole city and this was holistic, that would be the kind of things they would be doing. It would cost them very little. And I was in conversation with them at one point about that. And other Black aldermen have been in conversation with them about that because they don't do anything in North St. Louis. So you can stand here and talk about all the benefits, but I dare you to point something out in North St. Louis that's a benefit. It hasn't. They've taken that money and put it around WashU and in the neighborhoods that you represent. And like I said, they gave $10 million for Manchester along that corridor, but I don't see anything including the improvements of our schools because of this. So I just want to make sure you didn't imply that we somehow forced this upon the cortex, or that we approached them and said, hey, we got an idea, this would be so good. They got a lot of benefits from this. And to me, they got too much benefits, and a lot of this development could happen if we would say, no, we don't. Just like I just told you earlier before we did this motion to reconsider, we don't say no. We come back and do it over and over and over and over again. And so therefore, we never get to find out what would happen if we didn't do it. I have a question, if I want to ask you this. When this project went before the TIF Commission, do you, did it go back before the TIF Commission this year? Or are you talking about the TIF Commission that when it went before the TIF Commission back when it first started? Do you know when the project went before the TIF Commission?
Not off the top of my head, but I do know it went back before this year. It was in the last couple months. Can't remember the exact
And did the school board vote for it?
I don't know the vote count. I know it passed out of the TIF Commission.
But you don't know if it was unanimous?
I don't have that information on me right now.
Okay, thank you. I don't need to take any more time. My vote is still going to be no. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a point of order. Pursuant to Rule 50, we need a majority of the members present to be an affirmative vote, and we had 7, which is not a majority, so I believe that the last motion fails.
Your point of order is under consideration.
Thank you.
You need the majority of members present counted as an affirmative vote. Adopting a motion.
Your point of order is overruled. The member that you are citing is not physically present and to vote. And so once somebody leaves the chambers or leaves the building, they are no longer here to be counted.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, I move that we overturn the ruling of the chair.
It fails for lack of a second.
Second.
Sorry. Alderwoman from the 12th.
Sorry, I could not hear what his the alderman from the 4th said. Was his point of order that we didn't have a quorum or on the floor?
No, his point of order was related to we had members present at the beginning of the meeting that were no longer present at the meeting to vote.
Okay, and so, but did we have a quorum to vote?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Alderman from the 9th.
Is this
If
recognized
there's
to close?
no further discussion, you're welcome to.
All right, thank you. Again, I think we've talked about this in detail today, and I want to express my gratitude to my colleagues on this last day before we go on break. We are headed into the Christmas season or just whatever holiday you celebrate. I want to make sure that everybody understands that regardless of our disagreements today, we can disagree but not be disagreeable. That I still am wishing everybody a very happy holidays. I especially want to make sure that as we go into this vote for this TIF, we have all the facts. And so again, I'm just going to repeat that this is not a new TIF. This is the existing TIF that we are simply issuing the note for so that this project can proceed. So again, I really appreciate all my colleagues' consideration today, and I renew my motion for perfection.
It's been moved by the alderman from the 9th, seconded by the alderman from the 5th, that we perfect Board Bill 140. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Aye. Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderman Cone.
No.
Alderman Narayan. No. Alderman Balmer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. No. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Browning. Aye. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Aye. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
No.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge.
Aye.
President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. 10 aye votes and 4 no votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the alderman from the 9th to perfect Board Bill 140. Miscellaneous and unfinished business.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 23. Announcements.
Monday, December 16th, HUDs will have a committee hearing in the Kennedy Room. We'll have a hearing in the Kennedy Room at 11:30 a.m. That's the extent of the announcements.
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, Public Safety have a meeting at 2 p.m. in the Kennedy Room. We'll be taking up Board Bill 80. Thank you.
2 p.m. what day?
Tuesday, sorry.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you. I want to announce the 77th District Christmas giveaway that will be happening at O'Fallon Park Rec Complex. That'll be on Saturday, December 21st at noon. I will be volunteering there. I want to shout out Representative Kimberly Ann Collins, who does an excellent job helping organize that. It's a truly special event, and so if you can make it up there to volunteer or just participate, bring your children, it's going to be a really fun time and really just embodies the meaning of the Christmas spirit. I'd also like to take this moment to congratulate our president on her upcoming marriage that is going to be happening on December 22nd. So just congratulations, President.
Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I wanted to announce that one of the things that is happening this weekend on Saturday in the 7th Ward at the International Institute, Brandon Vine, in collaboration with Black Men Build, will be having their 5th annual coat drive, where they're giving away coats for children. International Institute is at 3401 Arsenal Street. It will be going from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. You don't need to sign in. You don't need to register. Bring yourself. Bring your children. Even though it is for children, they will have a couple of coats for adults as well. But just come by and get coats, and there'll be food and other things. And that is from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the International Institute on Saturday.
Alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, I would like to announce that this coming Sunday, we have Santa Claus, Melanin Santa at Intertwine Wine Bar taking photos starting at noon, and we'll also be going out and taking Santa to the people, to the kids in the community. And if any of the families watching want us to swing by the house, we are happy to bring Santa for photos and treats. And then on December 21st, we have a turkey, ham, and gift giveaway for eligible families in the neighborhood. If you haven't already registered, please go to DutchtownSTL.org /adopt. We do an adopt a family program in Dutchtown. And so I also just want to take a moment to thank the staff here at the Board of Aldermen for all of their hard work. Every year we have these lovely decorations, and particularly the legislative assistants and their efforts with putting together the board's holiday party along with other staff members means a great deal to building the collegiality down here at the Board of Aldermen and sending us off into the holiday season on a very fresh note. And I also want to, because they weren't here at the beginning of the meeting, have as my honored guests the NIS team. They do a lot of work here in the city of St. Louis. And I very much appreciate all of your efforts, particularly the two sitting up there that I see that work specifically in the 3rd Ward, Jordan and Darius, and Christian Soller, who's no longer in NIS. He's an NIS manager, but has been doing the people's work for a great amount of time. And very much appreciate all of you being here and look forward to having you at the festivities after this meeting. Thank you.
Alderman from the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I'll keep this quick. December 14th at Old North, we will have a Christmas event from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at 2609 North 14th Street, where you can take pictures with Santa. There will be hot chocolate and cocoa. It will be sponsored by Crown Candy, Zuka, Central Print, Rise, Old North, Restoration Group, and U.S. International Foods. Also, like the alderman from the 9th mentioned, I also want to give a shout out to State Representative Collins. The annual 77 Districts Christmas giveaway will be taking place at O'Fallon Rec Center December 21st at 12 p.m. Excited to be a sponsor of the event like I was last year. And lastly, this Saturday and the 14th Ward, December 14th from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., we will be lighting up the park. If you passed through Hyde Park and drove down Salisbury, we've already started to put lights around the gazebo, so there'll be plenty of trees out in the park, as well as hot chocolate, cookies, and food. And then that Sunday will be the 14th annual toy giveaway that we'll be doing at Herbert Hoover Boys and Girls Club. Lastly, even though it'll be next year, asking folks to start signing up now. February 14th on Valentine's Day, Heat Up St. Louis is teaming up again with parties for the Rise and Shine event. This is going to be a special one because it is the 25th anniversary. So please, if you can, sign up to be a volunteer. Every $1 that is donated, 100% of that helps Illinois and Missouri neighbors to make sure that they can have heat and also AC when they're a little behind on their utility bills. Thank you.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Seeing none, Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the motion to excuse.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. All members were present this.
Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we adjourn until Friday, January 10th, 2025.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 1st. Y'all keep wanting to stay here lately. That we adjourn until Friday, January 10th, 2025. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Happy holidays.